Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. As we usually do on Saturdays to wrap up the week, we're going to check out an entire album, going through it song by song and seeing what each song is doing on its own and what its contributions are to the larger artwork. Today we're going to be looking at a band called Foxing. I did a quick look because the name sounds familiar, but when I searched the channel, apparently we've never looked at them before, so I'm not sure where I heard the name before. It's definitely not a band that I've heard of prior to the channel, but yeah, something about it seems familiar. Something else to add is that up until a couple of weeks ago, this was the latest album called Draw Down the Moon. Came out in 2021, but in the middle of September they released their latest album, which is self-titled Foxing. So if you enjoy this, there's new Foxing for you to check out after listening to this album review. Alright, let's dive into this. We have 10 songs, 40 minutes total for the album. I mean, that's an average of 4 minutes per song, and looking at the track list, that fits. Most of the songs here are on the shorter side. So, let's dive into this, kicking it off with the first track, 737. So the primary guitar is definitely showing a 4/4, but that ornamental guitar that we kicked off the first two beats with is... yeah, that's very interesting.
I feel like a 737 painted over and over again until the paint gets too heavy.
Some melody and chord shaping, a little bit of harmony in the guitars, but foundation and lead, that's what we got right now. Oh, that little... what is that? It's got a ton of reverb. Cool little ornamentation stuff on the side.
My battery's low and it's getting dark. I can't do this alone. I can't do this alone.
So we have the brass over here, trombone maybe, trumpet, but we also have a widening of the vocal stack too.
I can't do this alone. I can't do this alone. I can't. I feel like I'm just proud.
You know what's wild though, is it came out in 2021, but it feels like late 2000s, early 2010s acoustic pop music.
I love you all and thank you. I can't do this alone. I can't do this alone. I can't do this alone.
The vocals over here. I love that.
I can't do this alone. 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 I can't do this.
Oh. Okay, I think I'm gonna like this album. Oh, jeez.
Draw your moon to me. 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 Draw your moon to me.
All right, that actually does sound like it goes right into the next track. I hate that, man. I mean, I enjoy that it goes to the next track, but I hate that I'm doing it this way and that I have to put the break there just because we have to talk about this. Dude, what was that? Like 2.5 minutes of, I mean, bordering on chamber pop, right? With the way that the layering works, bringing in the brass, the strings, um, just so well done too, right? This nice build up, little bit of energy. We drop it back down. The energy rise was based around layering. We had the little like raindrop sound over here. We had some widened out vocals. We eventually bring the brass in. On this side, we bring that energy up with all these layers, and then we bring it back down. And it's back to just the guitars and the vocals again. And then we bring it up, but this time with the snare, just dot, 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 hitting these eighth notes, building this energy, more layers, more volume, more everything, until he busts into a scream. These distorted guitars come in and just start making noise. It is, wow. And that, I don't, jeez, man. That's how you open an album. You draw me in with some soothing, beautiful melody and atmospheres, and you pull the rug out from under me, and you're like, actually, this is going to be distressing. And you know what the crazy part is, right? I want you to check this out real quick. I know Spotify views are not they're not very scientific, right? It's not easy to base information off of this with any sort of certainty, but this is actually one of the least listened to tracks. There's a couple that come in under this in like the 400,000 to 500,000 plays. This one sits in the 700,000 plays, but the very next track we're going to listen to has 3.7 million. There's multiple tracks on here that break the million number. So I'm kind of hoping that as strong of an intro as this is, there's more great stuff ahead of me. Like, this is only the introduction. As much as I loved this, things are going to get better. How is that? This is, yes. I'm here for this. I love this. You start off this strong, you've got my attention. Where are we going with this? Okay, now that I'm done kind of gushing subjectively about this, let's analyze some of what's going on this track. Alright, so it is a linear slow burn. Kind of already processed how that works. Layers, volume, escalating energy, falling energy, escalating energy into tension. Now, I had mentioned also that there's something very familiar about this song for me. It has to do specifically with the melody line and quite possibly the chord progression under it, but it reminds me a lot of late 2000s, early 2010s indie rock, maybe. Any of that, because like the acoustic guitar was really big. Acoustic guitar and vocals were kind of really big in the 2000s, and this is what that reminds me of, at least at the beginning. The expansion of the ideas, the ornamental stuff, the additional instrumentation, the layerings, the screaming, none of that fits within this. But that original foundation that we had, and of course we returned back to this after reaching that first peak and coming back down to just the guitar and the vocals. Something about it heavily reminds me of that era. In fact, I don't think it's too different from stuff we might have heard on the radios. It's like, okay, so I used to work in a department store, and I swear I heard stuff like that all the time. there's just something very familiar to me. It reminds me of my early 20s. And it kind of blows my mind that this album only came out 3 years ago. It's channeling so much of that energy. But what I really love about it is, of course, the subversion. The first subversion we get is the expansion of the idea. It isn't just guitar and vocals. That is where we start, but we expand from there, bringing in a ton of instrumentation. I am certainly going to have to look at the personnel list for this and see what kind of instruments we are dealing with. For instance, that reverbery raindrop sound off to the side, it's probably some sort of plucked instrument, maybe a harp, maybe a dulcimer, something like that. Tons of reverb and effects on it, though. It sounds really great. On the brass side, the trumpet's an easy call out, but the lower end one could have been a trombone, could have been a baritone. They kind of embody the same area. I think it's too high for a tuba. So I have some questions about that. I also want to know how many people are in this band. Um, Anyways, it's just like that is a fantastic subversion to make me think I'm just getting some straightforward indie rock, which I would have been there for also, and instead to expand it in such interesting ways, and really taking that feeling of, well, we'll touch on feeling and emotion in a second, but the growth of all this into that big moment, bringing in the harsh vocals, the distorted guitars, the noise, the lack of harmonic focus, unless you want to talk about dissonance as a focused harmony. I mean, yeah, technically. They really went out of their way to make sure nothing in that section was consonantly linked. So I guess there is a type of focus to that. I mean, where did that come from? We've heard some harsh vocalists who have fantastic voices. It shouldn't shock me. It really shouldn't. This is 2024. We have bands like Sleep Token and Ginger showing us people just, this fantastic, beautiful, clean voice, and then, gnarly harshes too. And those are only the most popular. This is kind of becoming a norm. It's actually really interesting, and I think that we're at peak metal right now, especially in the more mainstream area where so many harsh vocalists are really good clean vocalists. It's kind of like the meta for metalcore right now and alternative metal. Anyways, though, getting a little off topic there. Also, I'm probably going to get some flack for calling us peak metal for what alternative metal's doing right now. Ah, jeez. But anyways, it really shouldn't surprise me. And I mean, it always does. This dude has a beautiful, resonant tone, and so much emotion and expressiveness in the clean vocals. Like I said, easily passed for a pop vocalist. And, dude, that harsh vocal just hits. That's the type of surprise I love because I get it, right? And part of that is going to be a simplicity of lyrics. I understood what was going on in the song without needing to look at the lyrics, and that's always going to help things click on a first time. The idea here is that this person is having a bit of a breakdown. There's too much stress in their life or something along those lines. And they need other people to help them. They need emotional rocks in their life to help keep them steady. And for whatever reason, the support isn't enough. And we descend into this whirlwind of anxiety coming from every angle, whether it is the intense drumming, the bonkers harmonies in the guitars, the whirlwind of sounds in general. There's so many different instruments playing so many things that aren't tied to anything else going on. This dude just starts screaming, but there's also a vocal stack in here. There's some clean vocals around it, sort of like, jeez. It was providing a nice harmony in the center channel, but there's also secondary, tertiary vocals existing on the outskirts, kind of making it feel like these words are surrounding the music in a sense, and the music already feels large. I don't know what was being said here, but yeah, just the whole thing works so well, building up into this, coming to the cusp of it and bringing it back down, having control over whatever that anxiety is for it to rise up again and overcome the vocalist this time. Yeah, yeah, the music tells that whole story. And it's one of those things, right? You can certainly portray anxiety without noise and chaos and screaming. But when you do use those tools, you can create some really effective, evocative moments. And I absolutely love it here, particularly not just because it is done so well, but also because it comes as such a surprise. It is sort of shocking, and the shocking element made me drop my guard a little bit. I stopped listening to the song critically at that point. I don't remember what I was saying. I don't remember what faces I was making. I was so lost in the sauce. This music had me in full control. I was mesmerized by it, ensnared by the atmosphere they were creating. And yep, that was good. My heartbeat was racing. My heart was racing. My heartbeat was elevated. Like I said, I was so mad that I had to stop it here because it is going into the next track, and I want to listen to that next track, but this was too big of an opener for me not to talk about anything yet, for me to just allow the song to go on. Because, like I said, as far as openings go, I'm the target audience here, and that was powerful. Yeah, that's how you grab me. So, it also doesn't hurt that I like pop rock. I like that indie rock sound, indie folk kind of thing that they had going on at the beginning. I like expanded instrumentation, and the ending kind of feels post-hardcore-y, and I'm a little bit of a fan of that too. So it is the right genre for me, and they have composed it in a way that absolutely speaks to me. To this, so far, we're 3 minutes into an album, right? But so far, this is my cup of tea. I don't get to say that on the channel too often. This is absolutely something I would listen to on my own. So that makes it a joy because now I get to be paid to listen to it, and I'm a big fan of that too. I like having a roof over my head. I like feeding my kid. So it's always nice to have a win-win situation. Let me check out some lyrics for this one, and then we're going to push on into the next track. If this is a thesis statement for the album, oh boy, this is a major statement. This is about somebody who's feeling very low. There's not a lot of unique words, lines to this song here lyrically. There's a lot of repetition of the phrase "I can't do this alone" and "draw your moon to me." There are 4 verses in total, no choruses, just the refrains are "I can't do this alone," and the verses themselves are rather short and very direct. Verse 1 says, "I feel like a 737, painted over and over again, until the paint gets too heavy, grounded there, no company on my side." So 737 is an airplane, and I don't know much about why they would be retired, but apparently if you keep painting them so that they look nice, eventually that paint gets too heavy and they can't take off anymore, and then they're left in they're grounded. They no longer have access of freedom. But he says, "no company on my side," and I'm wondering, you would paint like the name of the company on the side of the airplane, right? Whatever, whoever made the airplane maybe, or whatever, like Southwest Airlines, whatever airline would be on it would be on the side. And now we don't have that. But I think also the the idea of company, being that this is a song about being alone. Company could be the people who surround you as well. There might be a double entendre there. The idea here, though, is that he feels overused, overworked, and too old. Verse 2 says, I feel like a rover alone singing happy birthday to itself on Mars. My battery is low and it's getting dark. So once again, feeling lonely, wishing there was some company. Verse 3, though, shifts away from these metaphors. Kind of harkens back to the plane for a second, but is very direct about it. It says, I feel like I'm just proud to be your friend, to sit beside you. I love you all, and thank you. There is one thing I omitted, though. It says, I feel proud to sit beside you while the paint gets too heavy. Coming back to the 737 idea. Then we get to verse 4, though. And I noticed a pattern here. It says, the planes that never fly. Okay, we're still talking about planes, 737s, that's cool. The debt that never dies. The beacons that never light. Track 3 is called Beacons. The moon stays in the sky. Track 4 is Draw Down the Moon. The lightning never strikes. Track 5 is where the lightning strikes twice. The homes I've left behind. The floors I'll never find. Track 7 is At least we found the floor. The eyes that never cry. The love never believed. Track 9 is If I Believed in Love. The dead who never speak. Track 10 is Speak with the Dead. 70% of these directly line up with the song titles in the order they appear. I wonder if The Debt That Never Dies being line 2 of verse 4 has something to do with track 2, Go Down Together. It isn't tied into the title of that song, but maybe lyrically we do hear that line pop up somewhere. I'm on board with this. Like I said, as a thesis statement, we have intention, we have theme, and we have connection to the album as a whole. I'm a sucker for this. But what's interesting is after these 10 lines of all these things that never happen, it says the spells we are whispering, draw your moon to me. Draw your moon to me, I think, is a way of connectivity, of reducing the space between two things. In a song that's all about feeling lonely, he wants to feel more connected with those around him. The spells we're whispering, though, I'm not sure how to interpret yet. And even from that perspective, I'm not sure how to interpret any of the other lines either. They are cool in the larger context of the album, but what do they mean here? Maybe they don't mean anything here. Maybe it's just a series of things that feel lonely. But I do love how it ties it all together, not just as a meta idea, but within the song itself, the lyrics to it. You know, this doesn't happen very often, of bringing all the parts of an album together in a song. And the only one I can think of off the top of my head, which is probably not the only time I've heard something like this, but it's the one that stands out most to me, is on Ginger's King of Nothing, with the King of Nothing track, the album closer. And I think the album opener did it too. I can't remember what that one's called, but they used like a line from every song to form a new song, and all the lines seem to fit together to create a unique idea. It doesn't feel smashed together. And I found that to be really, really ingenious for them to do. And, you know, this kind of has that same feeling for me. It's just a really smart way of doing things that helps everything feel a bit more connected. All right, I mean, we are off to a strong start. I love the music. I was caught off guard in a positive way, and I'm behind the lyrics. So, you know, this album's firing on all cylinders for me, and I'm excited. So, we're going to check out Go Down Together here, which is the most popular song on the album. Let's kick it, see what's going on. You know what? Let me take that back. I want to listen to the last few seconds of 737 again. I want to hear how that goes together.
Draw your moon to me. Draw your moon to me. Draw your moon to me.
Yeah, see, that's slick. This drum sounds...
Enough that I'm running on empty. I had to go and run out while I had you in the car with me. You see the elephant saddled with a lump. Hey, ever since I got going, I've been going for broke. Well, if I do, you said we'll go down there together.
That's funky.
You and I will go down there together.
Interesting pronunciation on together.
And if you should fall, I'll follow.
That vocal stack's gorgeous. The falsetto on top.
It's not enough that you're wrestling yourself. But your friends talk shit while you're going through hell.
Oh, what is this? Banjo over here?
Said it feels like you're swimming through mercury.
That's fun.
Every night you think you're gonna die in your sleep. Well, if you do, we'll go down there together.
Oh, bringing this toms in.
You and I will go down there together, side by side. And if you should fall, I'll follow behind. We'll go down there together,
The instrument placement on this is interesting.
side by side.
There are some instruments that are hard panned in a way that I'm not a huge fan of, but it's kind of working just because there's so much stuff going on. I think that was the bridge. It just... Okay. I think this is going to go into the next track too. It is. Dang, dude. You can't keep doing this to me. Alright. I don't have a lot to say about this one, but it is such a stark difference. I want to get some thoughts out on it. This is a pop track. Through and through. We have a verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. We have massive vocal stacks. We have some might argue overproduction on the vocals. There's definitely a lot of production going on. I find it to be generally enjoyable, particularly because of the sounds around it. This track was a heavy synth focused song, and so I don't mind it as much. But, you know, we have a lot of metalheads in the community, and I'm sure that the vocal stacks and production are going to be a turnoff for them. If they're listening to this at all, I kind of get the idea that a lot of the metalheads tend to only listen to the metal bands that they recognize. That's not to say everybody does that, but it's kind of the gist I get on the channel from my analytics that I look at. Yeah, I'm a real YouTuber. I watch analytics. I'm in a weird mood today. Anyways, though, yeah, the vocals, they're very poppy produced. We also have a lot of falsetto in here. It reminds me of some Justin Timberlake stuff, the way that he produces his falsettos and uses them in his music. I kind of feel like that's in here. I don't know if this guy is necessarily channeling his inner Justin Timberlake, but that's what I feel. All right, that's what I'm getting out of this. Around that, we have we kick off the song with that electronic drum sound, the snare. I really liked that too coming in this track. It was introduced at the tail end of 737, which made it not feel as awkward here. The cool thing about 737, as I already mentioned, there's so many sounds here that when this snare comes in at the end, I'm just like, okay, that's just another sound. And then it pulls over into this track, and it doesn't feel that different because it is a massive change. I mean, if I just give you the middle, random 15 seconds from the middle of 737, and I play you the middle 15 seconds of this, you might even tell me they're different bands. Drastically different sounds, but they found a way to smoothly pave over the differences between the two styles and find a way to mold themselves into this electronic heavy thing going on here in a way that helps it all feel connected somehow. It's honestly kind of genius. And I think a lot of it has to do with that transition. That could have been a very jarring experience moving from track 1 to 2, and instead it was very smooth. And I'm glad I went back and checked out the last 10 seconds or so of 737, because otherwise this might have been a bit more of a jarring experience for me, given that I did have so much time between these two tracks while I, talked about the first one. And so I think it's admirable to not even attempt this, but to go through with it and do it as well as they did here. It's just, man, that's just wild. Who thinks of that? We're going to scream and then make the danciest, grooviest pop song. Y'all are wild, foxing. We do have a plethora of layers once again. This moves away from the ABA structure that we sort of saw on track 1. Although you could also see track 1 as a linear song. I can appreciate that angle as well. This one follows up with a more typical A, B, A, B, C, B. We have a verse and a chorus. We do that again. We go to a bridge. We wrap it up on the chorus. There's a lot of layers in these, though, and it allows removal of some and addition of new in order for the second verse to feel a little different from the first. It allows the song to have a little bit more momentum to it, not be as stagnant, and the general growth and addition of layers allows each section to feel like it is going somewhere as well. This is a very contrasty song, and where we start, which is just the snare and the vocals, is very different from where we end, which is a full drum kit, a traditional drum kit too. We got away from the electronic drums somewhere in there, and I don't know when that happened. Again, just smoothness. That is this song's strength, or actually I guess this album's strength so far. It's just how they shift between ideas effortlessly. I hope they keep that up going forward, because so far I'm impressed. Extremely impressed by this. But we have all these instruments. A banjo came in. I don't know how that fits. It feels so wrong against all the electronic synthesizer stuff, and yet it kind of works. I will say though, it is a bit distracting. It has a very plucky, cutting sound where everything else is sort of rounder and molds together into a general atmosphere, and then the banjo just stands out like a sore thumb. I don't think it is a bad thing, but I did find it distracting at times. And I don't know, maybe softening it up with production, bringing the volume down just a tad. I don't know. I don't know what I would have done, because you don't really want to cover it up. It's the unique thing that elevates this. It's what puts, the foxing stamp on it rather than just any other pop song out there. So you don't want to hide it, but It was very ear catching. I'll put it that way. We got to talk about the vocal stack in depth here. There's got to be 5 notes at any given time here. It is just this massive harmony, and we have falsetto in there. We have mixed head and chest. We have chest, and then we also have a surrounding of it. Much like on 737, we don't just have the center vocals, we have some vocals off to the side as well, and it helps round the sound out a little bit. I'm sure there's some reverb thrown in there too, just some stuff to make everything sound a bit larger, because you got to compete with all this stuff going on. The vocals, a single vocalist is just not going to feel right against all of this production. And so the vocal stack, like I mentioned earlier, it just works here. There's definitely songs where this type of overproduction on the vocals is going to be jarring, but here it just fits. And it's because there's so much of everything that having so much vocals is just like, yeah, of course they would. There's so much of everything. Just, of course there's so much vocals. But there's something else about this too, is that, the vocals get pushed out to the side. But there's also, it's sort of like center side, panned out a little bit, but still within this general center area. But there's other instruments in here that don't get that. The center channel is actually kind of empty, I feel like. All the interesting things that I want to pay attention to are out on the outskirts of the song. And not just like panned off to a side, but like hard panned. The banjo is definitely only coming out of the right side here, and it feels distant. It is not right close to me. And that's good, I think. At least the distance thing. I would much rather have something that sounds too spacious than too compressed. I don't like heavy compression in music. I don't like feeling claustrophobic. Metal does this a lot, and it is a big hurdle for me to get over. And so I love spacious sound spheres. And I don't know though. It feels too far. Maybe that's a point of it as well. I didn't really pick up any of this on 737. That might have made a bit more sense given that we had somebody who's feeling lonely and isolated, that things were too far away from them. They wanted the moon to be drawn closer. But maybe that's going to be a theme throughout this entire album too, is distance. And maybe this is a thematic thing for the placement of instruments here. But it's not just the banjo either. There's some stuff off to the right as well. And it also feels kind of distant and hard panned. I'm not usually a fan of hard panning. It can be used artistically, but it also is kind of imbalancing for me. And that happens with the banjo. Like I said, it's very ear catching. I immediately, when I hear it, I can't even not hear it. It's just like, hey, I'm a banjo. Listen to me. I'm pretty plucky against all of this other warm stuff. And so my brain gets, my ear gets drawn to it, but it's off to the side. And it feels like I'm just being pulled over in that direction. And there's nothing to balance it. But, we have all this hard panning all over the place. And I'm curious. What caused that decision? Or maybe it wasn't a decision at all. It's just like we have 6 vocal stems and we have 3 guitars and the banjo and a bunch of synth and we have the drums, and is there a bass in here maybe? There's so much stuff I've even forgot to listen for the bass. And it's just like, where do you put everything? So yeah, eventually things are just going to have to be put on the outskirts of stuff. So maybe that's what goes into it. Now this was a big change from 737 rhythmically. We start off with a pretty steady groove, just quarter notes on downbeats. I think it was every other beat with that electronic snare. From there though, we started to introduce syncopated rhythms against the backbeat, and that was like 30 seconds in, and from then on it was pretty much a dancey groove throughout. Very tough not to move your body to this. Very different from the sort of grounded, grounded, or a grounded 737. Anyways, the very heavy, grounded feeling of 737, which eventually ascends into chaos, but that's a different kind of levity than the groove and syncopation we get from Go Down Together. And so I'm not sure how to feel about that yet. Especially since this is the most popular song. It makes me curious about where we are going with this album. Because this is, when we get away from the groove too and we focus on harmony, what's going on here. As far as the instrumental writing, a lot of it's chord based. I mean, this is what really sells it to me as a pop song is that it's chords and ornamentation. We don't really have melody coming from any instruments. We get that little guitar lick at the end of the song, the electric guitar lick. And I think that's one of the first times an instrument took a melody for any extended period of time. And I think it was like 4 seconds. When I say extended period of time, I really don't even mean that long. To take the melody away from the vocals. And so we have harmony, chords, foundation stuff. We have ornamentation, and then we have vocal melody. I mean, this is the foundations of a pop song right here. And so we've kind of moved into a rhythm that's infectious and palatable. We have a general sound here that's hyper palatable for a mainstream audience. This is a drastic departure from 737. What does that mean for the album? Where are we going with this? What are the themes here? 737, I felt, was rather clear, wearing its emotions on its sleeve. I only picked up a couple of words, and through that and the music, I knew what the song was about already. If they continue with that, we have a happy dancey song here. How does that relate to 737? Maybe it's not a concept album at all, but that final verse of track 1 tells me that everything's connected. So I'm curious what kind of themes we will be exploring. It's never, fair to judge an album on one song. So, I was kind of hoping we would have a lot of stuff like that first track, but we can explore different ideas as long as they can find a nice way to tie it all together. That's what I'm looking forward to. And that's where I stand right here at the end of Go Down Together. Both of these songs are fantastic on their own, but they're very, very different. I'm having a tough time seeing how they work together. They found a smooth way to transition between them, but transition is only half of the equation. You still got to figure out how they fit. And so I'm curious to get into both the lyrics for this and to keep pushing on through the album and see where else they explore. So let's dive into some lyrics, go down together, see what's going on there. And here we have a song that is about leaning on people. But in this case, it's somebody who doesn't really feel like they can be leaned on, and they feel like it impacts their relationship with this other person. But what's interesting is verse 2 flips the perspective, and we talk about the other person, and they also aren't a really great rock either. So we have two people who aren't great supports leaning on each other. And the chorus then says, we'll go down together. If you fall, I'll be right behind you. If I fall, you'll be right behind me. I do like it is an if though. If you should fall, I'll follow behind. Because when you have two people like this, it's kind of from a certain outsider perspective, it's probably more of a when so one of you fall, the other will go too. But they have optimism about it, and I can appreciate that. Verse 1 says, it's not enough that I'm running on empty. I had to go and run out while I had you in the car with me. I like that line. It's not just that I'm out of energy. It's not just that, I'm on the edge of my wits. I'm at my wits' end. That's the phrase. It's also that you're with me, and any sort of spiral I go through, you're going to accompany me on. It says, you see the elephant saddled with a loan. Ever since I got going, I've been going for broke. I like that idea. Taking the phrase go for broke means, just give it your all and see it through to the end. But reversing it and looking at it more literally, we have somebody saddled with loans, somebody who is not doing well financially. They're going broke. Also, the idea, you see the elephant saddled with a loan, takes us back to verse 4 of the first track, the debt that never dies. So, if track 1, okay, I see, all right, I see how, all right, let's go. All right, so track 1 is, it's the opening, it's the intro. It shows us what's going to be happening with this. We have maybe one person, maybe a series of vignettes of characters who are not doing well, but they don't do well in different ways. Track 1 is about wishing you had more friends, companionship. Track 2 is about having companionship, but not having money, and having that kind of weigh things down. However, there's also the second verse, which I said flips the perspective a little bit. It says it's not enough that you're wrestling yourself, but your friends talk shit while you're going through hell. You said it feels like you're swimming through mercury, and every night you think you're going to die in your sleep. So we have somebody who's just not doing well mentally. But both of these people can lean on each other. And if one goes down, the other will follow. I had mentioned that the bridge was kind of empty in this one. I didn't really speak too much about it in the analysis because it's sort of a non-point, but I do wish that the bridge had done something else. I'm a huge fan of bridges that change things up, and this sort of just kept the vibe. We had like 8 bars. It's a short bridge too. We came back to the chorus quickly, what we had just got out of. And we do see a variation on the chorus though. And we kind of just get the final couple of lines from the chorus. If you go down, we'll go down together. We get that over and over and over. So yeah. People in various states of distress. So the next song is called Beacons. Track 1 says the beacons that never light. So this is going to be about somebody who feels they lack inspiration. They lack the ability to inspire others, to be a light for others. I don't know. I am going to rewind this track just a hair bit because it does sound like it is moving into the next one again. So we're going to move into Beacons and see what's going on there. So yeah, just like we heard the electric drums at the end of track 1, which started 2 here, this is the electric guitar, right?
It all at once, I felt it all at once. I was floating for so long.
Still focusing on the falsettos.
Petrified by the sight of the sun. I felt it all at once, it felt like nothing at all. Fire broke loose in a moment there. I let it breathe for the first time. And as it danced through the room, undressing it.
Ooh, dude, those are big drums. No cymbals either, all tom and snare. Drowning out the vocals even. An interesting production on the drums. Ooh, that was fun. It's like a panning synth thing. Dissonant though. Chords, rhythm, and vocal stack. Oh, there's the bass. Okay. We got cymbal in here too. When did that happen? Oh, a little bit of grit in there. Bringing the trumpet back, I like that. All right. First thing I'm noticing, and I think, oh dang, just punched the microphone. First thing I'm noticing after 3 songs, we're a quarter way into this album now. Pop subversion. I think that is my big takeaway on this so far. Because I've called this pop rock. Go Down Together, I called a straightforward pop track. But I think I want to rescind those comments. Retract? What does rescind mean? Why do I know that word? Is it also something similar to take back? I don't know. I'll have to look that up later. Anyways, this isn't pop music. This is pop subversion. I do think that generally it leans into the pop sound, and I think anybody who doesn't listen to a lot of pop, well, let me take that back. I think anybody who doesn't exclusively listen to pop may find this to be too poppy for their tastes. Your general metal heads, country fans, stuff like that, be like, yeah, dude, that's just pop music. But it really isn't, and I think this was the song that uncovered it for me. And I started to retroactively think, especially about Go Down Together, about what was going on in there. And I think if you would take your average pop fan and play them one of these songs, it would bounce off of them. They might enjoy parts of it. The chorus to Go Down Together, I think, is going to go over very well, but it is not straightforward pop music, and I think your average pop fan would find it a bit too much. And I think a lot of it has to do with the ways that they don't make things poppy despite leaning into the pop aesthetic. And the first thing I want to focus on is production. The vocals are 100% emulating pop production vocal stacks. That, I think, is the clearest idea of it. But when we listen to some of the other instruments, when we listen to the drums, when we listen to how the drums are produced, where they are placed, how loud they are, what kind of texture they have, they're a bit too compressed and aggressive. And it was very clear here in Beacons, but I think it was even true towards the end of Go Down Together, that they are very rock style drums. They're not laid back at all. They're not there to lay a beat down. They're there to drive the beat. And it all comes down to, I think, the snare. The way that it cracks and pierces through the song, not what you would normally hear in a rounder, warmer snare hit in a pop song. There it's designed to emphasize a downbeat for you to dance to. Here it's designed to cut through the noise. It isn't just a metronome, it is a performer, a musician. But then I also start to think about some of the synth tones. And they generally have, qualities to them that I could hear in modern pop music, waviness or ethereal elements, an airy component, reverb and stuff like this. But then I also think about the core coloring of it, and they tend not to be warm. There's a lot of piercing sounds in here that I relate more to electronic music than pop. But even beyond that, it's not just individual instruments. Listen to how everything gets stacked up. This is something that I've actually been confused about in the past when trying to introduce your average mainstream pop listener to music outside of that, right? And I'm not talking about when I was a teen and I would just play them the heaviest thing that I knew because just being exposed to it was going to turn them into a fan of emo music or something like that. It's just stupid. And the thing is, people still believe that. Just pure exposure is going to work. And this is why I think bridge music is so important, and it's something I've learned about as I've gotten older. But anyways, I've always listened to music. I'm like, oh, this kind of sounds poppy. Maybe I should play it for someone who likes pop music. And I do, and the response is always, yeah, I don't listen to that kind of music. And in my head, I'm like, what do you mean? This is everything that, but it's not everything they listen for. It's everything that I perceive them to listen for. And that's what I kind of get here. And that's why I think that pure pop listeners wouldn't like this, because here on the surface these feel like pop tracks, but there's just too much. And this is something I never really caught on until I was like 25, 26, 27, and I started to piece this together after several failed attempts to get people into various forms of rock music. Is rock has a very big sound. Not just from volume, because you go to a club and you listen to the latest electronic song or the latest club version of a pop single. Those are loud, those are big, but they're not big production wise. They've just been volume boosted so that everyone in the club can hear. This is a big sound. The drums are loud. The vocal stack is big, but it's also not balanced well against everything else. Sometimes it's too large, as we saw with Go Down Together, or too small, like we saw in Beacons. And in that case, I would say the drums are too large. How many layers are going on in here? I want you to honestly, if you want, go back, rewind back to Go Down Together, go to the chorus, and just feel how dense that is. That does not have the spaciousness or the clarity that pop music does. That has the compression and wall of sound that post-metal does. Granted, the notes used, the chords used, the sounds of the instruments are pop-coded. But that's post-rock, that's post-metal, that's shoegaze, that's wall of sound creation. And I really like this smashing together of ideas, especially since a lot of it's just kind of flown under my radar. It's taken me 10 minutes to really come to this conclusion, but I think the phrase I just used, which I hadn't thought of previously, is pretty nice. I came upon that, is that these aren't pop songs, they're pop coded. They feel like pop songs, but if you're a pop listener, you're going to know something's a little off. They're going to feel draining, fatiguing. They're not what you would expect. And a lot of it comes down to these small details on individual instruments, but also the song as a whole. I think actually the opening of 737, with its general focus on acoustic instrumentation and minimal layering, there's a lot of stuff going on there, but there's room for everything, is the closest thing to pop music that the album has shown so far. And even that would be chamber pop, a greatly less popular subgenre of pop. Greatly less popular. That's not the best grammar for that. And while these certainly sound like more traditional pop music, they also very much are not. And I find that to be wild. Subversive pop, I like it. I like that idea in general. It gives me the feeling I like about pop, but allows me to absorb it and engage with it in a way that pop doesn't always let me. Yeah, I'd like more of that. And hopefully we do get more of it. And I'm kind of coming around to understanding this album better if this is the mode we still reside within. Because, like I said, Go Down Together felt kind of weird after 737, but through this perspective, I'm starting to see how everything's clicking better. And some of that apprehension I had moving into this third song is gone. I'm seeing what they're laying down now, and I'm beginning to appreciate it better. Alright, Beacons, lyrically, is about feeling alone, closed off from the world, missing sunlight, and feeling great shame, only to cast all of that away and feel alive. The chorus, both times, is preempted by a line from the verse that moves into it. The first time it says, "But I was out with the beacons of that shame," is where the chorus comes in. It says, "I've left them behind. For the first time I felt alive. I thought I could move my feet, but I'm running with you now. We're a stampede." This idea that I used to carry this weight, this burden, and I don't anymore. In fact, this is spoken of in verse 2. It says, "So I'll throw away the albatross," metaphorically used to talk about burdens that weigh people down in many literature. So, yeah, it's a song about getting rid of that shame that holds you down and being free. It doesn't really talk too much about what that burden is. There is a small allusion that if you'd like to, you could read into it. At the end of verse 1, it says, "I held the closet shut." Staying in the closet is a phrase about hiding your sexuality. But it seems that this was further explained by Connor Murphy, who is in the band. He says that he originally wrote this song about John Francesi Jr. And his informing on his dad, who is a mafia boss. He said he paired it with quotes from The Prince by Machiavelli, but another of the bandmates pushed him to rewrite it because it was incredibly impersonal. So the song instead became about being bi. So yeah, that's interesting. It's a celebratory song, lyrically at least. If track 1 is about being alone and track 2 is about the burdens of life that are put on you, track 3 is about breaking free from any. I had originally hypothesized that this might be a series of vignettes of how life keeps people down, but here we are 3 tracks in, already blowing that hypothesis out of the water. Going on with a track about celebrating life and not letting it bring you down. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to push forward with Draw Down the Moon, the second longest song on the album at almost 4.5 minutes. We do have a couple seconds left on Beacons, which I think is moving into the next track, so we'll continue on with that.
I'm never gonna stop loving you. If I could, I would have done it by now. We circle like salmon in holy pools.
Oh, the synth vocal off on the side.
You said you're never gonna stop loving me. Oh, I've been crawling on my
I Love that bass. We got cowbell in there. Oh, a little bit of chip tune in there. I like the way that the synths are playing off of the lead melody here, sort of dancing around it. Oh, this is a guitar, actually, not a synth. This center guitar sound is massive. Tremolo off on the right. Kind of avant-garde. No, that's not experimental in its atmospheric exploration. Interesting that both Beacons and Draw Down the Moon have used just a hair bit of rasp in order to sort of allude to what we saw in that first track, but never quite goes in that direction. Yeah, I love the rhythmic phrasing of that melody. Oh, time's getting a little interesting. The guitars were in sync and now they're slightly out. I think that's the first hard stop we've had the entire album. Granted, track 3 into 4 was a soft stop. I think we were very close to silence, but I think there was a drone or white noise or something that was continuing to play between those two. But this, we hit silence. So 12 minutes straight, give or take, of music. That's interesting. Wonder why they chose to put that break here. So this is actually a very cool song. I think we're finally getting to see something that I would have liked more of so far, but I think has been fine for what they've been exploring. The first 3 tracks are very atmospheric heavy, and I think using the instrumentation mostly for ornamentation and atmosphere or foundation has been working for the general vibe of these tracks, especially given how dense they are instrumentally. There's not really a lot of room to do melodic stuff, especially given the massive vocal stacks that we had on tracks 2 and 3. This one, though, after we get out of the intro, where we have a bit more vocal production, we find that the vocals are more singular. They're probably still double tracked, but they have a feeling of being one vocal now. And so the melody ends up being a bit thinner than on the other tracks we've listened to, and that creates space. And they run with this. There are almost consistent well, there is almost consistently counterpoint throughout this song. Usually not just two-way with a lead and the guitar off to the right, but usually also the synth off to the left. There's multiple moving parts to this song, and I find that to be really great, at least, in contrast. I normally enjoy counterpoint anyways, just a huge fan of it as a technique, but after having listened to almost 10 minutes of atmospheric music, really focusing on chord progressions and a single melody on top, this was a treat to be able to hear their uh, their writing of multiple melody sections simultaneously. And so that's what stands out to me on this one. There was, most of this album so far, I'll be honest, I've been paying a majority of attention to the vocals. It's what my ears snap to, the production consistently points towards it, and it's usually one of the few things that are actually moving. Ornamentation tends to catch my ear, but everything else is just a lot of chord work, chord progressions, and drone. There's actually quite a bit of drone in here. It's usually like tucked under all the more moving ideas, but yeah, there seems to always be something at the bottom that just kind of supports the entire song. Um, by this song, I didn't really listen to the lyrics much at all. At least not for the words, because I didn't really have that kind of time. My mind was jumping all over the place listening to what the bass was doing, the guitars, the synth, trying to hear how all of that worked with and against the lead vocals, how the drums were being worked into all of this. It was quite a bit deeper than the other tracks we've listened to, and I enjoy that. Like I said, it's a nice, I want to call it a breather, but a point of contrast for my ears to get away from the sort of comfort that they had come into, and be forced to explore other sounds, and to get back into that idea of really focusing into this analytical style of listening. And so I appreciate that. I think it provides good flow for the album as well. Now, I just got done talking about how this album so far has kind of been subversive pop, and I think this is the least pop track we've listened to, aside from 737, which, I mean, that whole chaotic minute towards the end is certainly the least poppy thing on here. But this one definitely feels more in the realm of indie rock, both in its rhythmic ideas, what the drums are doing, and how the instruments are used. I'd even go a little bit further and say that the melodies that the vocalist sings tends to feel a bit more rockish on this one as well. The chord progressions have a little bit more bite and edge to them, and I'd say it even overall feels more aggressive than some of the other tracks, which I've already talked about the subversive elements of them being an underlying aggression to it, but this song in particular, I mean, there was one point when the bass and the guitar combined were this massive tone. It really punched through in sort of a gazy kind of way. Noise rock, I think, minus any sort of noisy harmonic element, but just having a really large, compressed, distorted, overdriven guitar and even bass here presents this massive entity that shows up towards the end of this song and doesn't really leave. And when you mix in the largeness of tone of the instruments with the three-part melody, the counterpoint going on at the end of the song, it is dense production-wise, sonically, and it's also dense compositionally. And it takes some of that subversive element that we've been seeing and runs with it. The song still has a pop quality to it, particularly in the vocal production and the palatability of the vocals. We also have a very standard structure to this. And I wouldn't say that the song is overwhelmingly abrasive in its harmony. So I'd still say it has more of a poppier chord progression to it, but I think it takes what we have been exploring on tracks 2 and 3 and really drives more towards that aggressive side. And I find this interesting then as well as we begin to explore the flow of the album. If 737 kicks it off with the massive rug pull, everything after that has been making a height of creating something that seems super poppy and gradually running down as we enter into more aggressive, rockier sounds. I don't know if this is how it's going to continue to go, but it would fit with my original hypothesis of this being a series of negative vignettes, in which case maybe things get worse and worse over time. Although, again, Beacons kind of destroys that hypothesis, but maybe the rest of the album still supports it. All right, yeah, that wraps up my thoughts on this one. I think it's another groovy song. I think it has a great flavor to it. Like I said, it's got that fuzzy pop rock kind of sound. Works well for my ears. Catchy, super catchy melody. Very groovy stuff. And yeah, and I don't have any more on this. Let's hit some lyrics. See what's going on there. All right, this is actually in a similar vein to Go Down Together, although the relationship we're looking at now isn't two broken people leaning on each other. It's one broken person leaning on someone else. The feeling I get, because we don't ever see the other person's perspective, is that they're more put together than the narrator is, but I suppose that doesn't have to be the way it is. The verse says, I'm never going to stop loving you. If I could, I would have done it by now. You said you're never going to stop loving me. Though I've been crawling on my hands and knees through the valleys in the dark, I fall apart, you pick me up as impossible as I can be. So if you want to run right out, I will always be a home. The idea that you're always there for me, so I will always be there for you. And this takes us to the chorus. Says, oh, but I want to show you I can keep it all together. I want to draw down the moon for nothing but to deserve you. Oh, but I want to show you. And I don't think this is fair, but I feel a little disappointed. Based off of the initial line from track 1 about the moon that's never pulled down, or what did you say? Oh, the moon that stays in the sky. I suppose that could be interpreted as me not being able to show how much you mean to me by doing some grandiose gesture. But given the context of track 1's loneliness, I interpret it as space, distance between things. To bring the moon closer is to bring something so far away to you. And I was kind of hoping that this song would be about space and distance between people. And instead, it is a grandiose display of love. I love you so much, I would pull the moon closer to the earth. And I'm going to read too much into this. Y'all are welcome to criticize this criticism right here. Pulling the moon closer to the earth could destroy life. It would drastically alter so much about our world. It seems like a reckless thing, which maybe that is what it's supposed to be. But I don't get that perspective here at all. To me, it's supposed to be this grand gesture, but it seems short-sighted, possibly. And when I think of how I originally interpreted the phrase, I like that infinitely more than the grand gesture perspective. But what I find interesting is that this, again, is another positive song. And I'm enjoying that angle. We've had too many albums in the past few months where by the end of it, I'm like, I'm emotionally wiped. This was draining, such a depressing album. It was beautiful art, but I'm glad it's over. And so it's really nice to get an album full of these positive songs about the ways that we hold each other up. But the first track just doesn't sell that. It's really weird for the opening track to be I'm so lonely, let me name drop every track on this album, and then everything after that to be how great life is when you have people around you. And I think that works as a great antithesis. That if we look at the intro narrator as possibly a person earlier in their life before they have formed friendships, or a vignette of someone else, and we get to contrast their experience of loneliness with the people that have relationships, positive relationships, people to keep them up. By the end of the album, we can walk away and say, yeah, I do need to strengthen my relationships. I don't talk to my friends enough. Maybe I should give someone a call, those kind of things. I think that's a wonderful message to put into music. And we're only generally halfway through the album. There's still so much room left to explore thematically. But I do feel this whiplash now. Like, why start the album the way that they did? But like I also mentioned, this has a lot to do with Go Down Together. It's about people holding each other up. And again, I'm all here for some positive stories and messages and music, but at the same time, it does feel like a retread. Even musically, they're similar. They're kind of big, anthemic pop rock songs with catchy vocals and dancey grooves. Am I being too critical on this? Yeah, probably. But I tell you, man, that first song gave me such high expectations, and I don't think they've quite hit it. The ways that all of the themes and music came together there, it's just not present on the following three tracks here. And they're solid songs. Don't get me wrong. I've enjoyed my time listening to them, and there's still a really strong chance I end up listening to this album again. If nothing else, I will be checking out their 2024 album probably this upcoming week because I am enjoying myself with this. But I'm not gonna lie, my expectations from that first song were way up here, and I've kind of been brought down here. These are solid 6 or 7 out of 10 songs. I like the subversive elements. I like the edgy pop rock sound. I think that's a very cool combination of ideas. But they showed me they could do more, and then they backed away from that, and that's kind of frustrating. I think at this point I just need to reconfigure my expectations of this and not compare everything to the first song, but compare everything to the second, third, and fourth. Solid tracks, but missing that thematic cohesion and expressiveness, which is a bit of a shame, but it's also not going to be great if I continue on expecting something that they're not wanting to deliver on. Although in that case, why'd you put your thesis statement so good? Alright. Moving on then. Where Lightning Strikes Twice. Interesting title. At this point, unless things drastically change, I'll probably let the next couple of tracks play, since 2, 3, and 4 were all very similar. I had very specific ideas I wanted to talk about, but they were all generally, dancey pop rock tracks. Not a lot of unique elements to do an analysis segment for. Alright, let's dive in. Yeah, see, it's a little bit of this classic rock feel, but it's also very much dancey pop stuff. I love that combination. Ooh, that little darkness on that chord progression, or on that chord. and then the uplift. Into the tension, a little bit of darkness, the leading tone that takes us into the resolution. Yeah. Really weird chord progression on that go. What is going on there? So it's consistent tension, fluctuating level. Ooh, that's noisy. Fluctuating tension levels so that when we finally do resolve out of it, it's more impactful. I can get behind that. The gallop against that very rigid beat on the drums sounds so good. Yeah, give it to me. Really rough transition into this, but I like the passion we had at the end of the verse. Ooh, shifting the drums. So we pulled some of the gallop into the bass kick so that we can now put it into the toms. Interesting, because the guitars aren't giving us the gallop anymore. That's a fun little melody. The run right here. I was expecting a pattern, but we're getting linear melody. All right, let's talk about this. Of course, as soon as I said we're going to start pairing up tracks since they've been playing the same stuff, that's when they change things up, which is probably a good sign. If I'm noticing that there's a lot of repetition going on as far as a specific sound, they probably notice it too. Definitely need time to switch some things up, and that's where Lightning Strikes Twice comes in. This is definitely their rockiest song. Even that the galloping is such a rock thing, and like I mentioned, even with sort of the dancier stuff going on with the drum groove, we have that guitar rhythm that feels, at least to me, a bit like classic rock. And I love bringing that in with the edgier, modern rock guitar sound. And it all comes together in a really neat combination of genres, of styles. There's something dancey in here. There's something that feels a bit older. There's something that feels a bit modern. It's rock, but it's also kind of poppy. But I think this is also the least poppy melody that we've had this entire time. As far as the vocals are concerned, their delivery is rockier, and when we talk about the melody itself, there's a lot of tension in here. That isn't light tension for the pure purpose of harmonic movement and functional harmony, but it is tension purpose built for adding darkness to a sound. In fact, that entire go go, that whole thing right there is just real tense. It doesn't resolve within itself, and when they repeat the word go over and over and over, it is kind of bonkers. You don't hear progressions like that in music really anywhere frequently. It's directionless, it's lost, but it also hyper focuses on a darkness. And like I mentioned, I think the reason for it is that pulling out of it and finishing the loop and finishing that chorus, moving towards that positive uplift at the end of it and returning to that resolution there, it feels so much better after being stuck in that loop. And maybe even just generally the idea of being in a negative loop could be what the song is about. But yeah, that's just not something you're going to hear in pop at all. And so I really enjoy them taking this moment to say, okay, we've been really dancey, very popish for a while. Let's bring the rock part of pop rock into the mix a bit more. And it's not just the textures of the instruments. It's not just the instrumentation either. It's the melody. It's the harmony. It's everything. This is rock from top to bottom. It's just a very palatable rock. I did really like the way, well, this is kind of going across the whole album, but the way ideas get passed around. There are plenty of sections where I will point out, listen to the guitar do this, and then in the next section, another instrument will be doing what the guitar was doing. Here, the guitars do the gallop, the dun da da dun da da dun da da dun da da dun. They carry that through a vast majority of this song until the end of the second chorus, where the drums put it into the bass kick. Drums never done this in the chorus before, but here it is in the bass kick, and then we move into the bridge where everything's a bit lighter. That gallop has been put into the toms, and it feels right for the section as it's a bit more airier. There's not a lot of ideas going off right here. It's a bit spacious. And so being a tom heavy section really allows it to feel that weight put on it. It grounds the section rather well. But moving it from the guitar to the bass kick underneath the chorus that we've already heard for so long. So we've used this to sneak it into the drum kit. And now that it's in the drum kit, it doesn't feel so weird when it gets passed off to the toms and allows it to be the core rhythm of the bridge. Really smart movement of ideas like that is something that's been going on this entire album. In fact, it's used so often in order to transition between songs. I talked about this right at the beginning. 737, we have that electronic drum snare. And it comes in at the end and then is the drum sound for the beginning of Go Down Together. Otherwise, that could have felt very jarring, but because we introduced it in a section we were used to, it isn't so weird when it stands on its own. This happens all over the place, and it is really great. I love this type of composition. This is fantastic use of foreshadowing, and allows a lot of this to feel connected, even if it doesn't, I think, always want to be connected. Some of these songs feel very different from each other. Some of these sections feel very different from each other, and they are just kind of geniuses about figuring out how to tie things together in a way that feels natural to move between them. And this was just a really great showcase of that. A simple one, but an effective one. What was the other thing I wanted to bring up? Dang, I don't remember now. Much like Draw Down the Moon, though, this has a more of a rock-focused production, and I think my idea of starting from their poppiest song and slowly, gradually shifting to the rockier end of the spectrum might be what they're doing. This is even rockier than Draw Down the Moon, which was rockier than Beacons, which was rockier than Go Down Together. Emphasizing more of the rock element of the pop rock. And I'm curious if they're going to continue in this fashion. We once again have removed the really tall vocal stacks. We don't have any of that. We do have some vocal harmony in here, but not a lot of it. It is more focused on a specific set of instruments. I just noticed this, but going from 737 and Go Down Together, which layers upon layers of instruments, brass, strings, tons of synth sounds. This is guitar, bass, and drums and vocals. There's a couple of synthesized sounds in here to act as ornamentation, but we are really getting less and less of that. And so that's a neat little trick that they're doing. I don't know if they're going to continue doing it, because if this is the midpoint of the song, we are in for some heavy stuff ahead of us. And I don't really see them going that direction, despite what 737 told me they can do. I think that was more of a one-off concept. And I don't know, it's just been interesting watching this gradual shift from pop to rock. We did have a little bit of that grit thrown in there in the bridge of where the... Was it the bridge or the second? I know it was moving into a chorus. I just don't remember which section it was. But we had a buildup of energy. The vocalist really got passionate, pulled from the fire in their belly, and took their clean vocals, compressed them a little bit, leaned into that, and then even had a couple of syllables with, I'd say, pure fry scream on them before coming back into the verse and going back to that clean vocal style. That transition was jarring. I wish that was a little better, but again, maybe thematic purpose for it. Regardless, I do like the idea of it. The build up into it felt very natural. The use of it worked really well in the situation. The use of the harsh vocals. And just generally, it felt like a bit of passion and energy that I hadn't really heard much since 737. All of the really tall vocal stacks and the overproduction have been like candy to my ears, but we have lost a little bit of the human elements of the vocal performance that we heard on 737, and it was nice to return to that. I'm happy with how this album's developing. It's multifaceted. I can never really know what I'm getting into next. Let me check out some lyrics for this, and then we'll move into the back half of this album. This song just seems to be about growing old with someone. Verse 2 says, "When the cartilage leaves our knees and the sky refuses to weep, I will stand ancient with you, and if I'm too high to speak but too drunk to shut up, let me take my time to find my words." Verse 1 sort of goes in this direction, again talking about how much they've enjoyed their time with this other person. It says, "With everything we gave, it's hard not to feel devastated, but with you, not a day went wasted, so meet me in the tall grass." And that's it. Except the chorus, which just repeats, "I want to go where the lightning strikes twice." And that's obviously a play on the words of the phrase, often misquoted, "lightning never strikes the same place twice," just talking about the irregularity of it. So you want to go to a place where the irregular happens often, where rare things are given a chance to shine, maybe. Maybe they're looking at this relationship as something that wasn't meant to be, but ended up being anyways. I'm not sure. Most of the lyrics so far have been rather vague, short verses, and then a lot of repetition in choruses, usually with the bridge repeating something from the chorus and the outro being more chorus. So there's not usually a lot of unique lines in many of these songs, but I feel like this is their least dense lyrical song yet. And so I don't really know what to read into it other than this person's just really enjoyed a long life with this other person. And they want to go someplace together where the improbable is more likely to happen. All right. I'm going to move on to Bialystok, I think is how you pronounce it. This is the least played song on the album as far as Spotify plays are concerned. Curious why that is. Let's dive in, and if I have no thoughts, we'll move into track 7. At least we found the floor.
I was just thinking about watching television next to you.
It's very warm, compressed.
Not too much of anything at all. Sacred insignificance. They are arms from the universe. I'm dragging myself back home. But I'm
Lots of clipping, loss of sounds.
I feel so homesick everywhere I go. I feel so homesick everywhere I go.
Yeah, big fuzzy guitars, really bringing in the rock side now. Again, more so than the last two tracks.
I feel so homesick everywhere I go. I'm homesick everywhere I go.
I like the drum part, tons of energy, lots of rolls.
Arguing in the kitchen, just to be the one that you argue with, is a miracle in itself. Sacred insignificance, steeped in cosmic bliss. I'm dragging myself back home, but I'm homesick everywhere I go.
Really interesting delivery on that, but kind of almost animalistic. Very fuzzy, lots of compression everywhere. That buzz on the synth over there, definitely going for a wall of sound idea. The vocal production is wild on this track though. Nice counterpoint. Oh, we got some O's or Ahs over here. Got those offbeat hi-hats. Gives it that nice bounciness. I love this little expansion of the melody. Oh, this is on Hopeless Records, though. Isn't that a post-hardcore record label? Oh, I love the dynamics on this already. Something we've been missing sorely on this is each note having its own weight and voicing.
Here he comes again, the bad luck demon that I can't stop kissing. He's a rock slide on Halloween. He's a total rental in 2016.
I don't know why this reminds me of Sufjan.
We didn't really need him then. We never really do, but he said, well, honey, at least you found the floor. You can't get much worse than this. Well, honey, at least you found the floor. You can't get much worse than this. Well, honey, at least you found the floor.
Yeah, stark contrast to the last few tracks, but it's nice to hear a revisiting of the sounds that kicked off the album.
gonna get much worse than this. Oh God, He's everywhere I go. He's in my head like a metronome, clicking inside my brain. So I can't find tempo without a little bit of pain. And maybe we could have lived without him. But what would that look like? He tells me, well, honey, at least you found the floor. It can't get much worse.
Chordal shaping through dyads.
Well, honey, at least you found the floor. It can't get much worse than this. Well, honey, at least you found the floor. It can't get much worse than this. Hey, honey, this isn't the floor yet. It's gonna get much worse than this.
Oh, that's an interesting inversion of that line.
Yeah, it's gonna get much worse than this.
Oh, I was expecting like a diddle-doom, just like a run down the chord from highest to lowest to provide that final bit of resolution, and that's not what they did. And I know that would have been like super cliche too, but we didn't get that resolution, which kind of makes sense with the words, I suppose. Originally saying that things could be worse, but at least we found the floor, and there at the very end, he says, honey, this isn't even the floor. Things are about to get worse. And so, musically, we showcase that by not having the resolution that we thought we did. Originally, the song was about, hitting the bottom, and the very last moment is actually we're still falling. So, this was an interesting set of songs, though. If tracks 2 and 3 were our poppiest and most danciest, track 4 was somewhere in the middle, and track 5 and 6 were quite a bit rockier, this was a return to where we were. This is how the album kicks off. Chord shaping on a guitar, simple progressions, melody on top. It's interesting that it took so long to get back to this sound. And for better or worse, it's just that sound. What I loved about 737 was taking this and expanding upon it in a variety of different ways, and here we just took it at face value. It's possible that Cold Blooded or even tracks 9 and 10 may expand on this, and we'll see a nice wrapping up of the album across, the final 15 minutes or so. But right in this song right here, it's only half of what I loved about 737. It's missing the context. So, yeah, I'm not sure how to interpret this yet. Bialystok, though, that's just straight up rock. I mean, this was some massive guitar tones, lots of chord stuff. We had cool melody things going on. Usually whenever the vocalist stopped singing, a guitar would come in and carry on an expansion of the melody. I really like that. It's another cool way to make melody interesting. We've had counterpoint on here, we've had harmony on here, and now we have variation and expansion. I love that we're getting little doses of all of this. I do wish we'd have some grand opus, and maybe the final 7-minute epic on the album might do this, but I'd love to hear a combination of all of that. Something I am definitely missing as we get further into this song, or into this album, and the songs are becoming more simple, is the layers and complexity that we left behind, which also might be a thematic thing as well. We haven't really touched much on what we've left behind, but the album continues to do this. It finds ways to reach simpler sounds that are just as emotionally impactful as the more complex ideas of the opening. The dancey sections are very bright and vibrant. Go Down Together was a song about, a relationship. Beacons was about becoming and being who you are. These are songs that are very bright and engaging musically with positive messages. And as we move on, we have Lightning Strikes Twice, Bialystok. These are just very aggressive rock sounds. Sonically, we continue to simplify, though. And what does that mean? Why? Because, it started out as a little pattern I saw, and now it's just the album. Well, insofar as tracks 2 through 6 are concerned, 7 does throw a bit of a wrench into that being the ballad that it is. So really it's a palette cleanse. That's what it is. I was talking about, what is track 7? What is this going to be in the course of the album? But it's a palette cleanse. 8, 9, and 10 can be whatever they want now. So then what does that mean for 2 through 6? Being that shift gradual from pop to rock. I don't know. But yeah, both of these songs, I mean, we are at the simplest structure as always on this. Verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. These two, though, explored less variation. And a couple of the other tracks, we've had verses that are different the second time through. Here, we don't. The verse is the same both times through. The verse is really not much more than what the chorus was, without all of the expansive instrumentation, without all the ornamentation that we had seen, the embellishment in the earlier tracks. We have a lot of chordal work going on with the occasional melodic riff that jumps in, like we saw at the end of Bialystok. And so, I'm enjoying the theme here, the concept of the album, but with each passing song, I find I'm enjoying the album less from a purely sonic perspective. I think by the end of this, I'm going to enjoy it artistically, but I mean, jeez. Lightning Strikes Twice, maybe. 737 for sure. Those are songs I would revisit. The rest, though, they're neat in concept, in context of everything else, but they're just not super strong songs as far as I'm concerned. With the best ones being the earlier ones. Go Down Together is fantastic. There's so many cool ideas in there. It's still a weird letdown after 737, but it's chamber pop, and I love chamber pop. So with a dash of rock, even it's a very cool eclectic sound. But every song that goes by, we lose layers, we lose complexity, we lose ideas, and it shifts more towards simplified sounds. Until right here, track 7, we are at our most simplest, just chord shaping and vocals. And the vocal harmony is just octaves. We don't even have coloring to it. It's just the same note, an octave higher. So, again, from a conceptual perspective, this is very cool. We've been, going across this spectrum for such a long time, and now we're just jumping to the other side of simplicity, just like as simple as we can make it. But as a song, it's fine. I don't have anything to complain about with it. It's just, it's fine. It's a solid 5 out of 10. Maybe I might get pulled in emotionally on the lyrics, but it's harmonized arpeggiation with octave harmony vocals on top, and that's it for the whole song. And it works as a nice breather point for the album. And I think that's really where I'm coming around to this album, how I'm beginning to appreciate it, is that from a conceptual, artistic angle, there's a lot of really cool ideas that went into this. The ideas on paper are really, solid. I like how they're trying to tie everything together the ways that they are. But on the execution side of things, it's all just fine. I don't think they screwed anything up, but they certainly didn't push the concept as far as I think it could have been pushed. Although, as usual, I'll always add this. At a certain point, wherever they would have pushed this, they would have stopped being foxing. They would have ventured into being a different band, doing things that they wouldn't normally do, or maybe even that they wouldn't want to do. An artist wants to make music that they want to hear out in the world, and maybe at a point it would become too progressive for what they would want to play or put out there or listen to or whatever, and it wouldn't be them anymore. The authenticity would be lost, and that's always important, especially in the world of rock. Authenticity is king. So, like I said, I take what I say with a pinch of salt, I suppose. But I do feel a little bitter. The opening showed such promise, and they just never went that direction again. And they went and did something else that is as equally cool. I still want to put that out there. The patterns I'm seeing, how they're tying everything together, it's still cool. The execution just isn't grabbing me, though. It's all fine. Again, there's nothing that here is wrong. It's just not my cup of tea. So let me hit some lyrics. Oh, there is one other thing that I need to bring up. What was with the beginning of Bialystok, right? Weird warbliness that was affecting tone. So we were getting dissonance in those sections. The vocals were detuned, I think, at a time. It's very fuzzy and compressed. It sounded muffled. I'm hoping we hit the lyrics and I'm like, oh, that makes sense why they went for a muffled sound. But, as far as the album's concerned, nothing prepared me for that. It didn't sound great from a purely subjective standpoint. It's a bunch of breaking of sound. It moves away from perfection for imperfection, which I'm real fickle about. Y'all know that about me. I tend to like things to be a bit more on the pristine side. And so, the dissonance, the wild, destructive production on it, the high compression, muffled elements, it never really clicked for me, and it feels so distant from the rest of the album, and it was even distant from the rest of that song. We heard it for like 40 seconds, and then the song opened up, and we never returned to that sound again. So it's an interesting choice to do your first verse like that. And it didn't click with me originally. Maybe the lyrics will help with that. But I'm curious if anybody else has any thoughts about that, especially if you like glitchier or more destructive sounds in music. Did you enjoy that intro? As usual, I like to see the other perspective on things, especially when something just doesn't click with me at all. Maybe just talking with other people can help me appreciate something that I have difficulty doing on my own. All right, now we're going to hit some lyrics for these two and move into Cold Blooded. And Bialystok is a song about feeling homesick, not in particular for anything at home, but someone in particular. It says, I was just thinking about watching television next to you, just to sit there on the couch and not do much of anything at all. Sacred insignificance. They are arms from the universe. I'm dragging myself back home, but I'm homesick everywhere I go without you. And that's our chorus. I feel so homesick everywhere I go without you. Over and over and over. But I like this idea. The insignificance of it is actually what makes the homesick even that much stronger. It's sometimes it's even just a home cooked meal. It's being around specific people. It's a seat. You know, it's your bed even. And sometimes you go to hotels or you Airbnbs or whatever, and you sleep in a bed that isn't yours. And it's not that it's uncomfortable, it's just, it's not your bed. And, sometimes it's those small things that you kind of want the most. When you get home, it's like, yeah, I get to take a shower in my shower again. And there's just something about that it's refreshing. It helps. And in this case, which I think is also what some people are going to experience, is a longing to be around someone significant. Again, not to do anything in particular with them, just simply being around them, being in their presence, hearing their voice. It's enough to make you homesick. And I like that idea. You know, it's there's nothing poetic to this. It's not, I miss the sultry tones of your voice or feeling the warmth of your skin. No, it's like I miss watching TV with you. And like, yeah, sometimes it's the little things. I love that perspective here. The second verse says, I was just thinking about arguing in the kitchen. Just to be the one that you argue with is a miracle in itself. Sacred insignificance steeped in cosmic bliss. I'm not too hot on this line. I think it's neat. Even looking at the bad times and saying, yeah, I kind of miss you regarding that too. Um, but there's also a sort of self-deprecation here. Like, this guy is blessed just to be able to be the one that this other person argues with in a relationship. There's a sweetness to it, I think, but I don't know. It crosses a line for me that I'm not totally on board with, but I don't want to dig too much into because I don't think it's all that important. Um, and then pretty much the entire back half of the song is I feel homesick everywhere I go without you. Um, and there's a fiery core of why I feel homesick, and it's you, so I need to get back to you. And yep, over and over and over and over. Now I was trying to figure out what's up with Bialystok, and apparently that's a Polish city in the northeast of Poland. And Foxing performed here in 2019, and it was the farthest place they had ever been from their home in Missouri, United States. So I guess that's why they named it that. They felt homesick, and they were pretty far from home. And I suppose that kind of works, and I think this is the first time I've really found some thematic ties here. Most of the other songs, aside from just being positively anthemic and about being positive things, I don't really see a strong correlation between what's going on. It's just happy music with happy words. But this one I like. There is a grittiness, a dirtiness to this one that I think works well with this concept of feeling incomplete, of missing something. There's a melancholy to this track. Um, but what's even better is this idea of feeling incomplete can be tied into my question about the production on the beginning of the song, where it kind of feels distant, right? Muffled, hard to hear, but at the same time, there's also this incompleteness. It feels like it's only half of the song, especially since we know how large the Soundsphere can be. There's just so much space here. And that concept of space and distance and smallness and compression and feeling lost and incomplete, not whole, these are all really great ways to describe homesickness. And so I think they did a really great job with this, and that actually makes two times now, 100% actually, that when the when the album deviates from a very traditional pop rock sound, that we find some really strong thematic resonance between the lyrics and the sounds that they're deviating into, with of course the other time being the shift into screamy noise rock at the end of 737. I do wish they did this more. That's all I'm going to say on it. At least we found the floor is about mental, I don't know. It's about a voice inside that tells you to do the dumb stuff, I suppose. Verse 2 says, "He's everywhere I go, in my head like a metronome, clicking inside my brain so I can't find the tempo." I don't like this metaphor. The point of a metronome is to give you tempo. At best, I can read this that the metronome being presented in the head is running against whatever metronome the world might be at, and the dual clicking is what makes it difficult to find the tempo. But again, I have to stretch it. I have to extrapolate the metaphor to understand that. As it's stated, he just says there's a metronome in my head and it makes me miss the tempo, and that's not what metronomes do. So I don't know. I'm not too keen on that one. But anyways, this idea that, this voice is always in his head and it makes living difficult. Verse 1 says, "Here he comes again, the bad luck demon that I can't stop kissing. He's a rock slide on Halloween, a totaled rental in 2016. We didn't really need him. We never really do. But he said," verse 2 also ends with that. It says, "Maybe we could have lived without him, but what would that look like? He tells me," and that's where the chorus comes in, "Honey, at least you found the floor. It can't get much worse than this." Over and over and over. Of course, right up until the final repetition says, "Honey, this isn't the floor yet. It's gonna get much worse than this." So yeah, this is just, like I said, about an internal voice that screws your life up. I think this is the first song. Well, see, here's another pattern. This is the only song that I mentioned that deviates from a general sound they've been exploring. And not only do they do that, but it ends up being thematically resonant with the lyrics. Oh wait, no, that was the last one, wasn't it? Yeah. Getting my songs mixed up. Yeah, that was Bialystok. Here we do have a deviation, but this one is isolating. Okay, I think I can still tie things back here. So we have a song that is just guitar and vocals. This is very personal. Everything else feels very bombastic. It's very anthemic, very larger than life. I think it works well with these ideas of relationships and positivity. They're doing a great job of exploring the celebration of relationships in the lyrics and the music. These last two songs, though, have gone on a bit more of a negative angle. And so I do think it's interesting then that when they dip into negativity, they create music that is more thematically resonant, at least for me. It's also the ones that line up the most with their thesis statement. I still find it utterly bizarre that the album starts out with "I'm alone, so utterly alone," and then goes into a bunch of songs about how great life is. I still don't understand that. But Bialystok and At Least We Found the Floor, I think, lean into the promise of what the first track offered, which is interesting use of instrumentation, both within its own context, like 737 and Bialystok, and within the context of the album, which is where At Least We Found the Floor kind of jumps in on that, being a massive contrast from everything else on the album. And explores that with strong musicianship and thematic ties between lyrics and music. These are songs that I could come back to, I think. And I wish they would keep doing this. Again, it's not to say that I dislike the pop rock stuff. There are some good songs in there, but they're just good songs. Nothing wrong with that usually, but when they show me that they can do these thematically strong ideas and create art, I want more of that. No, that's a bit harsh because I think that that indicates that the poppier tracks aren't art, And I think I've mentioned enough times about all of the cool layers in most of those songs, and again, how they are taking the joy of a relationship and interpreting it musically into these big, bombastic, anthemic, powerful, positive songs. And that's definitely artistically resonant too. So I don't think it's fair to say what I did. I want to take that back. Rescind it, retract it. Again, I never did look up rescind's definition. But I am enjoying these a bit more. But it does make me wonder. Again, I'm this is going to be the last time I ask this, because the next time I bring it up, the album will be over and hopefully I'll have an understanding of things. But where do 737 and At Least We Found the Floor fit in with the rest of the album? Bialystok's a little bit in the middle. It is negative, but it also focuses on positivity. I'm homesick because I love you so much. But 737 is isolation in song form and anxiety. And At Least We Found the Floor is life sucks because this voice in my head that I keep obeying for some reason makes life hard. And every other song on this album is I love you so much and life is excellent. It's not perfect, but it's better with you in it. I'm so happy we're together. And like one of these is not like the other. So I'm very confused by that. Hopefully, things get answered as we push forward. We're going to check out Cold Blooded and probably If I Believe in Love back to back. Talk about them, and then we'll check out the 7-minute Speak with the Devil as the album closer. Let's dive in. Ooh, fun detuning stuff. Why does this sound slowed and reverb? Well, not the reverb, but it definitely feels slowed down. All the pitches are just slightly flatter than they should be. I'm not totally on board with that. It's a neat idea. Again, execution just not quite working for me. I like the rhythmic idea though. It's a strange texture though. Maybe it's also just a detuning. Drone, the piano. There's a lot of nice little ideas in here. Yeah, like a detuned synthwave drone in the background. I like this contrast. Nice variation on the chorus. Even the timing's a little weird with the guitar being just behind the drums. Lots of compression here. I'm starting to lose some of the Okay, that's better. Yeah, so it's just that section then. You're starting to lose some of the character on the drum accents. An interesting ending to back to the poppier side of things.
If I believed in love, I'd keep it to myself.
Yep.
I'd bottle it all.
Cool syncopation. Very modern vocal melody line. Stuff you'd hear in R&B.
I moved to a new state. If I believed in love, if I believed in if I believed in love, I wouldn't tell a soul. I'd put my head in the sand.
If I believed in love, I'd never tell a soul.
Till I'm left alone.
Dude, you've just sung like 6 songs about being in love with people.
And on a lonely heart. If I believed in love, if I believed in love. Every time I run wild from the heat every day I spend my time in a blind, I wonder.
Okay, I can get behind this.
Every time I run wild from the heat.
This is wild. We have something bordering group vocals with yelling.
Every time I run wild from the heat every day I spend pent up in a blind, I wonder. Every time I run wild from the heat every day I spend pent up in a blind, I wonder. And it was worth my blood. I'd unattend my mind. I'd confess in tongues. So never mind the logic. We threw it all in the fire. 'Cause I believe in love. If you believe in love.
Manually doing an echo, but having it all legato slurring together. Guy cracks me up sometimes. He has a very fun way of delivering vocal melodies. All right. Cold-Blooded, I'm not too keen on. It seriously sounds like it's 3.5 minutes long on the dot. It sounds like it's probably about 3:55. No, sorry, I gotta go the other way. 3:05, maybe 3 minutes flat, and they just stretched it out that 20 or 30 seconds. And when you stretch out audio, it gets detuned. Just like if you smush audio, you make it faster, it gets higher in pitch. That's how you get your chipmunk sounds. And yeah, so they stretch it out a little bit. It kind of brings all the pitches down of everything just enough. But there's also like a specific texture, timbre maybe, of stretched vocals that it just feels like to me. It's not even just the pitch oddity. There is something in the way that the instruments sound that feel like it's not just detuning. Feels like they've been stretched. I don't know. I would I'd be curious if there's any information about it. Maybe when I go read the lyrics on Genius, they'll have some interview about it and they'll say, but as of right now, I don't know. Maybe I'll check Wikipedia too. But yeah, right now I don't know. That is my hypothesis though. Is they took a much shorter song, stretched it out just a bit, and then called it a day. And there's some cool ideas in it. I like sort of the synth rock idea. Can we call it that? It's like synthwave with indie rock smashed together. I think there's some cool ideas there. So the textures are great. The atmospheres are cool. It even has a droning synth pad in the back that kind of gives it this synthwave attitude. And it works. I'm not usually a fan of drone, but it absolutely works. And I don't know if it's because the vocal melody's going. I don't know if it's because we got the guitar riffs or the bass work. I don't know if it's the occasionally interesting drumming. That sounds like a backhanded compliment. It's just that the drums in a lot of these songs are very metronomic. Occasionally we'll have a pretty cool fill, but for the most part, a lot of the drum work is four on the floor, every other beat, just, laying down the backbone of the song. And so just like on most of the other tracks, Cold Blooded has some really cool fills in it, but for the most part, the drums are just a backbeat. But there's movement in Cold Blooded, which I think allows the drone to just sort of exist as a texture on the outside of all of that. But yeah, man, again, cool concept. Execution bounces off of me. I don't know if it is the way that it sounds. Maybe it is just what appears to me to be the stretching of it. I don't know. But yeah, the thing is too, right? It's not out of tune because all of the instruments, I believe, are detuned the same amount. But it's because I generally know what, for instance, a C sounds like. I might not be able to have perfect pitch and be able to tell you, oh yeah, you're playing a C right there. But if you're playing the halfway point between a C and a C sharp, and then also the halfway point between a D and a D sharp, and the halfway point between an E and an F, and all of your stuff is like a half step or a quarter step off, because a half step would be C to C sharp. I'm going to feel that, and that's what that song feels like to me. It is microtonally 12 tone, and that is, well, it's not bonkers because it's pretty easy to achieve. Just nobody does that. And I think not really for good reason. It just ends up feeling very experimental. I think even if you don't know music, you're going to be able to feel this. It's just going to feel a little off. And that's where I am on it. It feels weird. I'm hoping the song leans into that. The vocal, or yeah, the lyrics were something about being cold blooded, haven't cried in a while, feeling out of sorts of yourself. And I'm hoping the detuning kind of leans into that vibe a little bit as we explore more of the lyrics and we can kind of see if that theme is further talked about. But I mean, just on a sonic level, I did not enjoy that. It's got a real icky feel to it, which again is a good description for feeling other than yourself. Artistic standpoint, fantastic. Subjective, I don't really want to hear that again. So that's where I stand on that one. If I believed in love, I think this is a really cool, big final collective moment. It starts off super poppy, just like Go Down Together or Beacons. Pretty much synth based entirely for quite some time. We had some crazy vocal production on this one. I didn't even notice that it was kind of quieter and more compressed than we had been until the band comes in and the sound sort of explodes. And we approach more of this combination of synth and electronic and pop and rock all together. It has this cool, driving, edgy guitar sound, giving us this driving riff. The drum beat is a bit faster than we've seen in some other tracks. Definitely has momentum and direction to it. but everything around that, the vocal rhythms, the vocal melodies, the chord progression, the synthesizer stuff, all of this is very pop and or electronic. And I just find this to be a fantastic culmination of every sound we have heard up to this point. I think it takes in everything. It feels like the best of Where Lightning Strikes Twice with the best of Go Down Together smashed into a single song in the most comprehensive way possible that also highlights each of the individual elements on their own at times in order to showcase how each of these elements influence the band to create the whole of what Foxing is doing right now. That felt like a run-on sentence, but I assure you it was grammatically correct. I love If I Believed in Love. It does so much right in this experimental world of foxing, of combining all these disparate influences into something that works. If the majority of this album was shifting from a pop style to a rock style, this is the point where we say, let's get back to the middle and do everything to the best of our ability. And I absolutely love it from that perspective. There is a lot of instrumentation in here. There's a lot of ornamentation of ideas. The melodies are super catchy, as they always are. We've returned back to that modern, poppy, catchy rhythm stuff in the vocals. You can find this in so many vocalists these days with really fast beginnings of sentences. Da 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 da, and it urges you into it. These pickup notes into the core of the rhythm. They're all over this track, but it is just such a modern pop vocal thing, and it is super catchy. I mean, there's a reason everybody's doing it right now. It is so good. It works so well, and so it works in this context too. And when you just merge that with the driving energy of rock, I think you get something that is full of energy, that kind of has a bit more of a grounded, rooted feel to it than the way that some of the overproduced vocals and synthesized parts have kind of felt in some of these songs, which has been, for the most part, a good thing. This idea of being unrestricted from the earth and floating away definitely meets the feelings of euphoria that our narrator feels talking about these people that they enjoy being around. But this song kind of grounds things, and it retains the energy of rock with the ethereal power of the electronic side and the infectious grooves that we can find on the pop side of things, and just pairs it all together into honestly just a perfect encapsulation of foxing. I do like how I feel about this song, coming off of, kind of seeing parts of everything over time to finally getting the full foxing experience. But again, there's a large part of me that's like, dang, if every song had a combination of ideas like this, I'd been sold on this album. This, I think, is truly experimental, truly progressive in some of the best ways, and I would love if they fully explored this concept. I get why they don't, I think. I don't think any of your songs are going to hit 3.5 million plays if your entire album is like this. It is a bit much for your general audience, whereas something like Draw Down the Moon, I think, has a wider appeal to it. No, not Draw Down the Moon. Go Down Together. But I tend to like more progressive music, so I'm going to request bands that showcase this type of skill in writing to lean into that a bit more. I like to see the genre, the style of art, music, sonic art, be explored, the boundaries pushed, and I like what Foxing's doing here, so give me more of that. Let me read some lyrics on these two, and we'll see how they conclude this with the only song on here that reaches any sort of length. 4-minute songs are not super long, and pretty much everything in here was sub 4. So a 7-minute song is going to be a pretty big statement from a band that's pretty rarely cracks that 4-minute mark. Alright, Cold Blooded is indeed about somebody who has become desensitized, and they no longer feel sorrow, wanting to cry about anything, needing to let this, emotional, overwhelming feeling happen, and nothing unlocks that. Says, I wish I could get out of my head, but I'm back in it again. It feels the same, at least. Now, what's interesting is both verse 1 and verse 2 reference two very specific things that I would not have understood without the genius annotations about it. The first verse says, I used to cry to only time. I forget the last time I tried. I wish that a day without rain would make me feel the same today, but I'm desensitized. A Day Without Rain is the fifth studio album by Enya, and Only Time was one of their most popular songs. I don't think I've heard it. Maybe I have. Maybe it's one of those songs that if you played it for me, I'd be like, oh, it's that song, but I've just never heard the name of it. It says it was immensely popular after the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks, as it was used in several radio and television networks during their coverage and aftermath of the attacks. But yeah, so we have somebody who this album used to really make him cry, and now it doesn't. The second verse says, I know what's on your sleeve, and when it weeps, it's a holy thing. When you remember Malon Lane turned 9 and no one showed up to surprise him, you are crumbling. So this one news story about a 9-year-old kid who had a birthday party and no one showed up to it. Again, a very specific news thing that I've never heard of that story. I don't know what that is. This person, though, that our narrator's with, all they have to do is think of this one thing, and then they crumble. They just begin to weep uncontrollably. This is in contrast to the narrator who just can't cry about anything anymore. It says, nothing makes me cry. I must be cold-blooded. That's the chorus. Now, I like the topic of this song, to become desensitized to negativity, to sorrow. I think that it's becoming increasingly prevalent, at least in, I don't want to extrapolate, so I'm going to say at least in the US. Maybe it's in other countries, but I'm a US citizen. That's where my experience lies most prevalently. It feels like every day we are bombarded with stories of atrocities, and it becomes really difficult to feel any of them in the full emotional response we should, because after a decade plus of just constantly hearing about all this negativity, it just doesn't hit anymore. We've become desensitized. I mean, it's pretty bad when mass shootings aren't something that we weep over, but are instead added to a statistic that we can coldly point towards. That's where we're at as a society over here. And so, like, I get this. I think it's a very cool topic to talk about. Cool is probably the wrong word, but poignant, maybe. I think it's cool that it's present in a song. Emotional desensitization, especially to negative stories and art and all that, I think is something that a lot of Americans at least are going through. And having a song that looks at that, yeah, I think we need more of that. And there is a little bit of depth to this. I like how when he says, I can't even cry, to a song that was paired with a 9/11 attack, something atrocious, but you can cry thinking about a kid who other kids didn't show up to his party. Like the most catastrophic stuff, I feel nothing towards, and you weep at this simple little, sad day, right? That's not to say that it probably wasn't catastrophic for this kid. Being a 9-year-old, no one shows up to your party. Yeah, that's kind of a big deal at 9. But in the grand scheme of things, compared to 9/11, it's such a small thing. It's tough to even call it an atrocity at all. It's a bad day. I like that comparison there. But I think the chorus being repeated as much as it is, and the chorus being as surface level as it is. Nothing makes me cry. I must be cold-blooded. Like, it feels juvenile to me, and I think it undercuts and brings down a topic that I would love to hear more of in song. And so I appreciate what it is, and I'm going to accept it for what it is because I feel there's so little art about this specific topic. But once again, it's an idea I really like on paper. Conceptually, the execution just doesn't quite ring out for me. I wish it had gone into a little bit more depth, but again, that's a weight that I don't think I should put on Foxing because none of the songs have really been deep in here. It's all been really surface level, heavy repetition, lyrical content, and so to expect more than that isn't fair. The only reason I expect more or want more out of it is because in the larger scope of art, we just don't see too much of this. So when someone does it, I'm like, dang, I wish you had pushed it further. But that's not taking into account what they wanted to do with their art. I also do like how this lines up a bit. Again, this was the song that was slowed down ever so slightly to a point that it feels just wrong. Something about it isn't right. It feels like it's out of sync, out of phase with itself. And we have somebody who feels detached from who they are, at least who they were. Nothing makes them cry anymore, but it used to. And that sort of dissociation, I think, is present with that minor detuning going on in the song. And I really like the way that that lines up. So there is a lot to praise about this, even if I wish I had been taken just a hair bit further. If I Believed in Love is an interesting track, I think, to say the least. Verse 1 and 2 speak about the things and measures, the things he would do, the measures he would take in order to never confess the idea that he believes in love. However, this is only what he would do if he did believe in love. For instance, the first verse says, I'd keep it to myself, I'd bottle it up until my lungs couldn't take it, and I'd move to another state. Verse 2 says, I wouldn't tell a soul, I'd put my head in the sand until I'm left alone, then wander off like a mystic and own a lonely heart. The chorus, or refrain, for this song simply says, if I believed in love. From this perspective, if we had stopped the song here, I would wonder what was going on here. Something I've brought up in the past is that every album is a concept album. I don't think everybody agrees with me on this, but at the very least, most albums are an encapsulation of a specific time that an artist or band were making music. Usually, that doesn't mean that there is any narrative consistency, as we would see in traditional concept albums that tell a story across the album, but we will see consistent patterns, whether that's lyrical themes or musical themes. Maybe there's stylistic choices that pop up that weren't on other albums. Maybe it's just the general vibe and atmosphere. Take any of your favorite bands, especially those who have evolved their sound over time, and kind of see how each album is a time capsule of who they were at that time. I think you'll also find, if you look at the lyrics, that themes will be present. Even if they aren't necessarily creating a narrative, you will still find concepts being reiterated throughout a work. This obviously doesn't work on all cases. If an album took 15 years to make, that's not really who the band was at any point in time. That is a long time for change to happen, and that might actually be captured in the music, as different songs have wildly different ideas to them since the band were totally different when they made them. But it's impossible to separate yourself from your art. Who you are at a time is going to influence what kind of art you make. And so I view all art as, or most albums as, concept albums. in a certain light, in a certain perspective. And so I do tend to take everything together. Albums are not just a series of disparate songs to me. Unless it's like a greatest hits or a best of, or maybe like B-sides, splits, maybe. These might be collections of songs written at different times throughout a band's history or an artist's history, and they might not have anything that ties them together. But generally, most LPs, I'm going to find themes or patterns that define them. And I find this one really interesting because, as I stated during the reaction, we have listened to, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5 songs, if you want to count Cold Blooded in there, as songs about love. Cold Blooded's a bit of a half, but there is another person that they share strong feelings about, that they are contrasting their own experience with life to them. They know them pretty well. I kind of feel like there's probably some love there. So however you want to read that, maybe you want to include it or not. A majority of this album, though, is about loving people. And so we come to a track that says, "If I believed in love, I would never tell a soul." And this feels really weird, right? Because, like, dude, you just spent an album telling people about your love. And this makes the ending kind of wild, because the outro inverts what we've been hearing so far. It says, "If I believed in love, and it was worth my blood, I would unattend my mind and I would confess in tongues. So never mind the logic, we threw it all in the fire, 'cause I believe in love, if you believe in love." And so this ending says, once again, if I believed in love, that I would tell everybody. Oh, wait, this is how this works, isn't it? Well, dang. Okay, so here's my thought process here. The ending is a perfect encapsulation of this album, which actually, oh, that works. Oh, jeez. All right, so this whole album is, I love all these people in all these ways, or maybe just this one person across multiple songs. I don't know who these songs are about. He just says that I have a lot of love, and he spends several tracks singing about it. And here at the end of this track, he says, if I believed it, I would not think about anything, and I would tell everyone. He says, I would confess in tongues. And so I was like, well, what if that's why he said the things in verse 1 and 2? He knows he's just going to blabber about this to everyone. So if I believed in love, I would just not tell anyone. Well, it's not even not telling them. It's like I would distance myself from everyone. I would shove my head in the sand so that no one can ask me about this. Because if a single person does, I'm telling them everything. And from that perspective, maybe it kind of works. I really have to read into it to see that, though. It's all I think it's a weird subversion here. I've liked their subversive tendencies on this album. This one I think is one that just didn't fire as accurately as the others. It still hit the target. It's just not a bullseye like some of the others that we've seen. The idea here is that he sets up this idea of, I don't believe in love. If I did, I would just ignore everyone, because whoever wants to talk about that. And then the ending is supposed to recontextualize that, and you see that they just want to scream from the top of a mountain how much they enjoy love, how much they love these other people, right? How much their love means to them, which is of course what the album did. This is his mountain. He's released an album about all the people in his life that he loves. So, I mean, it kind of works from that perspective. But if that is the perspective it was intended to go on, which again is a little shaky, but I'm accepting it, then it is also a song that is sort of meta, where musically this track took all of the ideas that we have heard in this track from the rock and the noise and the electronic and the pop and made a cohesive song out of all of that. We also have lyrics that address what this album is doing as a whole. both on the lyrical and musical level, this is a meta track about what the album is. And I think that's freaking awesome. Do I think the execution's perfect? No. Man, their execution is just not fantastic. But they are idea people, right? I think from this point on, I'm going to be like a sidelines Foxing fan because they got the ideas. I wish they could just land their shots. That's all I want. But they've got some big ambitions, and I am always on board for that. I may be a bit frustrated listening to it, but I cannot cut them down or diminish their ambition. And a song like this, it just reminds me how big their ideas are, and it puts a smile on my face. It really does. I love having all these loose threads throughout this album, and then here, right at the very end, 7 minutes to go, I was like, oh, this is where they all tie together. There is still one loose thread, though, and I'm kind of hoping it gets answered with Speak with the Dead, which is our final track. What does track 1 have to do with anything? I still don't get it. 1 and 7 are anomalies in this album. And I'm really curious. They are the only ones that don't deal with love in any capacity. Well, the idea of not being loved, of being lonely, but I mean, 7, I don't know, man. Let's just hit it. Speak with the Dead. What's going on here? So we have digital of the synth, but the other synth is giving us like bird chirps and raindrops, so it isn't necessarily digital versus nature, but it's at least the illusion of digital versus nature, creating this immediate schism, duality. There's another one. Listen to his vocals. There's a little delay. Hard hands. Oh, I like the synth under the vocals. That's nice. Heavy compression on those drums. And reverb. Very expressive, semi-melodic drum work on this. In fact, as clear-cut a 4/4 as that last section was, it was really tough for me to feel those beats out. It took me a moment. And that's just because there is no like metronome instrument. I love the way dreams and then kind of pulling it in. I wish I could sing so I could emulate this stuff better. I love, man, the flourish. All the little dynamic nuances to the vocals. You noticed more of the introspective songs have the clean vocals with the human nuances, and the more bombastic songs about being overwhelmingly in love have the pop overproduction, as if he's so elated it's kind of removed that human quality and he's ascended to another form of being. Rhythmically, it's kind of getting a little chaotic. Ooh, oh, okay, let's go. Very smooth. That's his bluesy guitar solo, fat bass. Got this 3 polyrhythm in here. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Yeah. I guess it'd be slower, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our 4. And then we had the 1, 2, 3, and 1 and 2. Yeah, dude. So more duality, the 3 against 4 there. I don't think we've had polyrhythmic ideas at all on this album, right? There's only like a minute and a half left. Are they going to do an atmospheric outro like this? Or are they going to bring back another chorus? Because I feel like that was a big moment. I don't know if you want to bring back that kind of intensity. And here, again, another split between the 2 vocals. There's also the slurring in here. There you are. Words are kind of scooped into, and then even within them there's a lot of vibrato that kind of plays around with pitch before moving into other notes, very legato style. There you are. It's a very, very smooth movement, but it creates something that feels imperfect, I think would be the word I want to use. That was an interesting track. I think that's one, well, I was going to say, I think that's one I need another listen to fully grasp. We're actually going to have another listen to it. It's not even 3 hours yet on this video, and most of these album reviews are like 3.5 to 4. Part of that is because the album is a bit on the shorter side. But I told the person who requested it, they asked if I could check out the music video for Speak with the Dead after the album, since it was on the shorter side. I said I'd see how long the review went, but I'd probably be able to do it. And sure enough, this video is a bit on the short side, so I'll toss that in there. It'll give me a second chance to hear that, and then to also see the visual component, see kind of what the band was aiming for with that. But my initial thoughts on this, yeah, I don't know. It's it's glitch. That's the thing about it. It kind of okay. So if noise rock is our chaotic, rockier side, we never really saw anything on the chaotic, electronic, or poppy side. We had a bit of wild, too much production stuff going on with Go Down Together. Maybe you could argue that that would be a chaotic type of pop production, with everything being so overproduced. But, if you want to make that argument, we still don't have an electronic representative. And I think this is where that might fit in. This is a very glitchy song. A lot of the instruments in here have some sort of production element to them that makes them, I don't know, they move in unexpected ways. And I think it is a nice way to complete the chaotic trifecta of having exceptionally palatable electronic, pop, and rock elements in here, and then exceptionally unpalatable rock, electronic, and pop ideas in here. And I think it's also equally interesting that the chaotic sections bookend the album with the first six and a quarter minutes being one end of the chaos, and the other 7 minutes at the other end being the other type of chaos. And both of these represent a bit of negativity within an album that is, well, Go Down Together is a positive track, but semi-positive? And it's about two broken people who lean on each other. That's a feel-good story, but it doesn't make them any more whole. So I guess there's a tinge of negativity to that. I don't know. I'm still having such a tough time coming around to this one. And a lot of it is because of that glitchiness. There is a very cool combination of electronic and pop in here. I like the vocal runs. There's some cool melodic ideas. Much like If I Believed in Love, I do believe that it brings all three genres that they've been toying around with together in a cohesive package. But yeah, I'm a bit lost with it. There's a lot of sounds in here that I just I don't know how to interpret, I suppose. But this also excludes our 1.5 minute outro, which, what's up with that? The heavy reverb, the it's not a canon, but it's kind of close to that, where we have multiple voices all saying the same stuff but slightly out of phase with each other, where one person will say something and then they'll say something else, and then another voice will say that first thing, and then a third voice will say that first thing while the second voice is saying the second thing now that the first voice is saying a third. It is kind of a canon, or a round, some people will call that, but it's not equal. Everything kind of has its own feel to it. So time feel, that is. So what's going on there? What's with the schism, the divide of this, the repetition of it, the heavy atmosphere, and again the heavy use of legato slurring. There has been such an articulate enunciation of words throughout this album, especially on those faster modern melodies. And here, we're just really blending all of our notes together. Words are just becoming or syllables are becoming other syllables. Notes are melding into their next one. There isn't that crisp stopping point between syllables or pitches. We haven't heard that really anywhere on this album. It is a unique thing for the final 90 seconds of the album. I don't understand the choice for that. And this is one of those things where I'm going to reach out to the audience participation. No, to the community. Do you have an interpretation for the ending? Because I don't, and I would love to hear yours. Aside from that, there is just a lot of noise in this one. Right from the start, I mentioned I couldn't even get the time signature right. I was sure it was 4/4, but I couldn't find the beat. The drums weren't giving it to us. We had all these runs with no accents to them, so it's tough to get, that backbeat to feel. I really had to suss it out on my own based on what the melody was doing. I eventually found it, but to no help to any of the instruments. And so that was kind of crazy. We had some duality of the voice there at the beginning where we had a short delay, only like, I don't know, a quarter of a beat after. So it feels more like an after image than a call and response kind of idea. And then we also have what was another division thing that was in here? We had the 3 against 4 polyrhythm at the end. Again, another idea that hasn't been present on this album at all. I don't think we've heard polyrhythm or polymeter or anything that wasn't even in 4/4 up until this point. There's just a lot of really interesting ideas here that deviate so far from what the band has done. It makes it feel both as a collective understanding of the album to say that this is everything the album has done and we will compress it down into a single track, but also it is its own thing. Unlike If I Believed in Love, which feels like a compressing down of the album, this is a compressing down and then an expansion added onto it. Why? I like the idea that most of the songs on this album have something unique to them, something that I could listen for on a future listen and say, oh, yeah, this one's obviously, Where the Lightning Strikes Twice because it has this concept in it. What was that? Passing of the Baton? Is that what Lightning Strikes Twice had? Where the core motif was passed between several instruments. And so, Speak with the Dead has its own unique things too. Like, I get that. That's cool. But, like, it also does so much stuff that the album just hasn't played around with at all. And what does that mean? So, I'm going to hit lyrics. I hope I find some information there about what we could be exploring here and why there's so much new rebirth. Is that what this is about? A lot of this album's been positive, but there have been negative things. 737, Bialystok, At Least We Found the Floor, Cold Blooded. All of these have kind of had a little bit of a negative element to them. Maybe this is what's going to tie that in. Maybe it's, I don't want to feel lonely or homesick or, be tortured by this voice inside anymore. I'm ready to speak with the dead, explore the past, and hopefully that helps me take my next step in the future. I think I'm setting myself up again. I hope I'm not, where I have a pretty cool concept in mind based on the title, and then they chose to go in a different way. I hope that's not what happens. Hopefully they ape whatever my ideal was right there, and it's better. Because that always makes me feel better, right? If not, then I could have done this. I always like when I'm like, oh, it could probably be about this, and then what they do is like so much better. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why you guys are the big rock stars. All right, let's look up some lyrics, and then we'll watch the music video for this. All right, this is interesting because it's its own thing, honestly. There's a lot of stuff put into perspective here, but I also feel like it doesn't really fit the album too well. Maybe I just need to expand my scope of the album. They have another song called 5 Cups that is also about communicating with the dead. In a tweet, they had mentioned that 5 Cups is about denial and anger. Speak with the Dead is about depression and acceptance, and that eventually they'll have to write a bargaining song to bridge them all together, since those are the 5 stages of grief. I wonder if then on this 2024 album that just came out a couple weeks ago, if they did their bargaining album. Or bargaining song to fit in here with this. Regardless, again, like I said, it doesn't really have much to do with the rest of the album, which is very much about appreciating those in your life now. Well, I mean, okay. From that angle, a lot of this song is I love you, you're great, I'm glad you're in my life. Having a song that says I miss you to someone who's not here anymore does thematically fit, doesn't it? Okay, Okay, I'm coming around on this. But it does, I think, tie into Five Cups, the other song, a little bit better. Sort of an extra album connection rather than an inter-album connection. It says, last night the smoke from the bonfire followed me. It's a radio to the gates. I'd rather hear your old voice follow me, but there's nothing to do but wait. So here I wait until I fall asleep. Speak with the dead. Some nights I hold old faith in the rituals. If the left-hand path should cross your road, pray with grimoires or swinging thuribles. Their incense dissipates all the same. And in my dreams I'm on a porch with you. I promise you I've been doing well in your name, and I won't try to speak with you again until I watch my last breath dissipate. But when I wake, there I will wait until I fall asleep. Speak with the dead. So, that's the whole song, except for one last idea, which we'll visit in a second. The idea here, though, is just wanting to talk with somebody that has passed. And, kind of doing these little rituals in order to communicate with them. Whether it's smoke signals or, little rituals like incense and stuff like that. And it says, I fall asleep waiting to talk to you, and when I wake up, I wait to talk to you. And I think part of this is just the general waiting. You can't ever talk to these people again. But I like this when we get to the bridge. He says, I do have a dream, though. I'm on a porch with you, and I promise you, I've been doing well by your name. So I'm going to assume this is a parent they're talking about. They carry the name of this family member. He says, I won't try to speak with you again until I watch my last breath dissipate. So the idea that, this will be the last time I try to communicate with you. I'm just feeling really low right here. I'd like to hear your voice again. But I'll let you rest. I like that idea of, you've earned your rest, man. I'm not going to try to call you back up to the mortal plane again. And just know I'm doing well. Next time we talk, I'll be on the other side with you. And I think that's a very powerful little narrative there. And of course, this is summed up even greater. At the end here, there's one last idea. He says, wherever I go, there you are. And wherever you go, there I am. The idea that even though we may not both be alive, that doesn't mean that our presence isn't felt by each other. And I love that. That is beautiful. Simple, but beautiful. And that's what Foxing has done very well on this album. I've criticized them for being a little shallow at times lyrically, but I can't disagree that the simplicity has allowed for a type of beauty, of just calling it as it is. No flowery language, no deep metaphor. Just, it looks like a flower, I'm going to call it a flower. And there is a beauty in that simplicity. And I think it ends up making for an album that is absolutely gorgeous most of the time. I do think this is an interesting direction to end the album on. I don't know where else this track would have fit in. To me, it feels like a bonus track. If I Believed in Love, I still think is the perfect culmination of all of the music they've explored. It's the perfect culmination of all of the themes they've explored lyrically. That feels like a finale, but it doesn't end the album very well. The ending of Speak with the Dead is a great album closer. We hit some absolute peaks and then bring it down with a nice atmospheric, emotional minute and a half final part. If somehow they could have worked that big bombastic part into the atmospheric outro, into If I Believed in Love, I'd probably say that's how the album should have ended. Speak with the Dead could have been a bonus track or an unlisted track. What do they call those? Hidden tracks? And for all I know, maybe it is. Spotify doesn't list hidden tracks, they just give it another track title. So I really like this song. It does feel a bit out of place on the album, but it's partially tied as we explored. Let me get the music video set up. We'll look at that real quick, and then we'll wrap this video up. All right. If you're not interested in watching this, of course, there's the timestamps if I have any additional comments I want to make about this. Or if you just want to listen to the outro spiel, I mean, maybe you like that part of the video, you can always skip to that if you're not interested in this. All right, let's dive in, see what they're doing with this music video. Ooh, that is an aspect ratio. What in the world? Is that like 3 to 1? 3.1 to 1?
Night, the smoke from the bonfire followed me. It is a radio to the gates. I'd rather hear your old voice follow me.
Oh, so the duality of the voice, right? Maybe that is, I'm with you, you're with me.
So
Here but not here, Oh, there's some trumpet over here? I don't remember that the first time. You know what it reminds me of? I don't know why I didn't make this connection the first time. That last section's very polyphonic spree.
Dissipates all the same. And in my dreams, I'm on a porch with you. I promise you, I've been doing well in your name. And I won't try to speak with you again until I watch my last breath dissipate. But when I'm awake, there I'll wait until I fall asleep.
Oh, there's a cool sparkling over here.
To speak with the dead, here I wait until I fall asleep. To speak with
dang, okay. So yeah, everything up before this, I love those boots. Everything before this is, it's the depression of wanting to speak with this person. That's why it's so heavy and chaotic. This groove, just kind of feeling in it. Yeah, it's just the acceptance. And of course the lyrics here is, wherever I go, there you are. I don't need to speak with you. You're always here with me. Yeah. Or I guess I don't need to seek you out because you're always here with me. I've been muted this whole time. All right, so as I had mentioned, this song is about the narrator's, presumably, I think, a parent passing, or maybe a brother, sister, family member at the very least, and wanting to communicate with them. I still think it's a parent because of the "I'm doing well in your name." Parent, grandparent, definitely someone who came before them generationally. And them wanting to communicate, talk to them one last time before realizing that spiritually this person's always with them. And they don't need to seek out this connection because it's always there. It's a really beautiful message. I like how that's shown in here. It also made me click with something that I hadn't picked up earlier. And that's actually sort of the positivity at the back half of this song. It isn't bombastic, party, upbeat stuff, but it's not as chaotic or sorrowful as the first half of the song. The first half does a great job of showcasing the flurry of negative emotions when you're missing somebody, how you can feel that pain, that sadness, that longing all together. Right as the lyrics say, I don't need to call you again, or this will be the last time, because you're always with me. Everywhere I go, you're there too. That's when the music has this big shift upward. And we get this little bit of uplift, the bass comes in, and we go from something that's rhythmically vague to something very groovy and chill. The song learns how to be, how to exist. This is the moment of acceptance. And I really love that transition. It is gorgeous. I did not pick that up the first time. There's also a lot of ornamental stuff I didn't hear the first time around. Some twinkling, I don't know, bells or something over here. And I think the trumpet was over here at one time. It's just a beautiful song, as I've already said too many times now. But I do love the music video too. I think this is gorgeous. Um, to me, I get the feeling that the person who passed, that was their mower. And so their way of communicating with them was to use it to cut some grass, you know, of sort of reconnecting with them over this thing that you associate with them. So I'm going to start crying. I thought I was going to start crying during the lyric bit, and somehow I made it through that with only some glistening of the eyes, but I think I'm going to hit it now. Because I've done the same thing when my dad passed a few years back. And yeah, it's just finding that way to connect with the person after they've passed with some sort of physical thing of theirs. And he had the mower with that 0 turn radius. What do they call it? 0? I don't know. That thing was turning on a dime though. That's a high end mower. My dad didn't own much. I kept a few board games that he had, and I inherited, I guess is the word, his computer. It was quite a bit more powerful than mine in some ways, and not in others. And so I took my parts that were better, I took his parts that were better, I put it in a new case, and it's still the computer I use. It's still got both of our stuffs in. I haven't upgraded it in the last like 5 years. It's going to be a tough day, I think, when it becomes too old to do what I need it to. But it's having that way of connecting, I think. And I mean, my dad taught me everything about computers. So I mean, my love for coding and troubleshooting, building, I mean, I got all that from him. So it's a pretty big piece to have that. And I love how that was put in this music video. I don't know if that was actually something that meant anything to the vocalist, I assume. But the intention, I think, is pretty clear with that. Another thing I really like about the music video is the aspect ratio. I mean, this feels kind of weird to say. It is ridiculously wide. Why is it so wide? I did, a little eyeballing. I kind of like used my fingers like, okay, this is the height, so how many times can I fit this into the width? And it's got to be like 3-to-1. And the thing is, with super wide aspect ratios, it's usually used for stories that are larger than life. Your 2.85 to 1, your theater style ultra wide stuff. It works really good for Lord of the Rings, superhero films, stuff that you really want your characters to look small on screen at times, that they fill up so little of the space. Most of our TVs and monitors are 16:9 widescreen, standard widescreen. This is really good for personal stories. This is one reason why you don't really see too many epics on TV. TV tends to be sitcoms and soap operas and dramas, things about people, because it allows the people to take up more of the screen. There are very few Hollywood films that are shot in 16:9 because they tend to be a bit more epic, and so you want that widescreen element to really focus on the world and the story. but there are certainly some dramas, interpersonal stories from Hollywood that are shot on 16:9. And so aspect ratio actually makes a lot of difference in how an audience understands your film. And this is ridiculously wide, but all of the shots are close-ups. That entire final 2 minutes or so feels weird in this ultra wide. That is something you probably would have wanted to shoot in 16:9. But it did something interesting. It had a close-up of his face in a lot of it, and then black around it, negative space, as it was just, a night scene and stuff. And the camera was moving wildly, and he was moving wildly. And if it was less wide, it would have been able to fit everything in perfectly. But because they went for this super ultra wide aspect ratio, it couldn't. That made it feel chaotic. That made it feel claustrophobic. This was supposed to be a moment of acceptance, but I really like this element of visual tension underpinning that. As I've mentioned in the past, I've even written a song about this. The 5 stages of grief are anything but 5 distinct stages. We talk about them in order. Once you reach acceptance, that's the end, but that's not how grief works. I tend to bounce back and forth between depression and acceptance. And I like that that's there. That the music is uplifting and that we saw this connection here and there's all this positivity, but the idea that acceptance isn't permanent, and we do have this little bit of chaotic element at the end of the song visually that I think represents the ability for the acceptance to wane, for days where you're less accepting of what happened. I don't know if that was their intention, but that's what I read out of it. And what started off with me thinking, why would they ever choose this aspect ratio? What a dumb decision. Ended up with me thinking, oh, actually, it kind of paid off. It's a genius idea. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Fox sings, what's this album called? Draw Down the Moon. An album about relationships. Sometimes being lonely, sometimes being alone doesn't mean you're lonely. And sometimes enjoying the heck out of life with someone else in it. What are your thoughts? Is there anything in here that stood out to you? Anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you just want to give me your own thoughts or perspectives on tracks. Let me know. Put all that stuff down in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. Alright, that wraps it up for this video. Tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Well, Eastern Standard Time anyways. Might not be morning for you. I'm doing a live stream. I'll be there for 2 hours. We'll be checking out music, chit-chatting, having good conversation. Drop on by. Yeah. Enjoy the company. Enjoy the chatting. Enjoy the good music. Otherwise, though, if that's not your jam or if you can't make it, it's always Monday. I'll be back as usual, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We'll be exploring next week's theme. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, with the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.